are really stubborn and intractable. A lot has been achieved. Today, kids go to school for free, get school nutrition twice a day, especially kids from poorer households. Today, young women can study sciences, which was prohibited in the past. And today, young people can access higher education, and numbers of graduates that have been recorded in South Africa is phenomenal as a result of the establishment of the National Financial, the NSFAS. Today, the elderly people can access a set of comprehensive social grants together with child grants, together with disability grants.
Yes.
Today, people can access primary health care for free.
Yes.
Surely it's a story of freedom.
Aha.
But a lot more still has to be done, and so we wish South Africans a happy Freedom Day as we celebrate and we march on to continue on this transformation.
I thank you so much. That was the ANC National Spokesperson, Mahlengi Bengu Motsiri. That's where we got to end. From the team this morning, Tracy Bumga, Tizwengana Manashe, and Marumu Kakana. Our senior producer, Ronald Piri. Our technical producer, Sia Daniel. Executive producer, Vutsila Kota. I'm Elvis Preslin. We'll see you on Monday. Same time, same place. Ciao for now. Arrivederci.
In our top stories, Palapala farm theft accused back in court, and Supreme Court hears Trump's claim to immunity. Good morning. The three men accused of theft of foreign currency at President Cyril Ramaphosa's Palapala farm are this morning expected to appear in the Bela Magistrates Court in Limpopo. The three face charges of housebreaking, theft and conspiracy to steal. They allegedly stole $580,000 at the president's farm in February 2020. Rendane Ralipaswa reports.
The NPA earlier told court that 2 additional arrests were imminent. This is as they had applied for the extradition of 2 Namibian nationals in connection with the case. 2 of the accused, who are siblings, Floriana and Didinasho Joseph, have been released on bail. Floriana worked at the farm as a domestic worker at the time of the theft. Alleged mastermind Emanuela David has been denied bail. The matter is expected to be referred for trial soon.
Some economists have described a merger proposal between Anglo American and the world's largest mining house, the BHP Group, as a potential mega deal that could reshape the global mining industry. BHP's headquarters is in Melbourne. It's said to be doubling down on its big bet on copper demand growing exponentially in the global shift away from fossil fuels to electric vehicles and batteries technology. Economist Gary Boyson explains what the unsolicited conditional merger proposal entails.
As part of the deal, they're expecting Anglo to unbundle Anglo American Platinum, so AmPlats, as well as Kumba, and they're really after the underlying copper assets. Those copper assets are obviously key to an electric future. We're looking at EV production and the move towards greener energy. Copper is becoming an incredibly important asset. To complete the transaction will take some time, and they're not factoring in a lot of time value of money at the moment. So let's see if an increased price comes through. But at the moment, a very exciting deal and a massive transaction, probably the biggest mining transaction since Glencore bought Extortion back in 2013.
The Finance Minister, Inogo Dongwana, says the many sectors that are functioning well are helping the country's economy grow. He was reacting to the recent International Monetary Fund report, which ranks South Africa as the largest economy in Africa. Godongwana says South Africa has a strong and stable financial sector that can compete with the rest of the countries on the continent.
Give you an indication now, we're strong on the retail sector, we're strong on the telecom sector, where we're a mining jurisdictions which have developed the competencies in those areas. So what we need is to look at the South African, well, we've got the biggest financial sector and a stable financial sector on the continent. So what we need to be talking about, how do we strengthen those competencies in which South Africa can excel?
In election news, The Umkhonto weSizwe party leader Jacob Zuma says they are determined to ensure that Africans are emancipated. He says Africans have been oppressed since the dawn of democracy, with the majority of them living below the poverty line. He was speaking at his residence in Nkandla, northern KwaZulu-Natal, where the party unveiled a number of vehicles donated for its election campaign.
We have realized that given the achievement of the people amongst ourselves, we have turned against big and white people. They arrested us for nothing, and they were doing the same thing that was done by Aboriginal, while they call themselves freedom fighters. They have reversed all the good things that we have done. That is why people have decided to form the strong and powerful organization. It's like Noah's Ark to save the
Further afield, and finally, the majority of U.S. Supreme Court justices have cast doubt on Donald Trump's assertion that as a former president he should enjoy complete immunity. This relates to criminal prosecution or any action taken while in office. The ruling could have profound implications for the future of the U.S. presidency. Trump has embarked on a bid to reclaim the White House in November. The BBC's Gary O'Donoghue has more.
If he were to get his way and they were to agree with him that he has total immunity from criminal prosecution, that means that two of the other criminal cases against him would fall straight away. The Florida documents case, where he was accused of taking stuff from the White House and then obstructing investigators. Even the state case in Georgia, which again is about trying to overturn the election result there. A lot of his problems would evaporate. What we saw, though, is an indication, even from some of those more conservative justices, that they're not really minded to agree with that idea of total immunity.
Recapping the top story, the three men accused of theft of foreign currency at President Cyril Ramaphosa's Palapala farm are this morning expected to appear in the Bela Bela Magistrates Court in Limpopo. They allegedly stole $580,000 at the president's farm in February 2020. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, it's cricket action. The Dolphins splashing into the Cricket South Africa T20 Challenge final, beating the Warriors. And in soccer, Mamelodi Sundowns keeper Ronwen Williams, he's not fazed by Esperant's slender lead. We'll unpack these and other stories in sport just before 6:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. Crashing to watch out for on the R21. This is between Olifantsfontein and Nel Mayfield. It's up by St George's Hotel. It's a vehicle that's crashed into the barrier. There's no big backlog of traffic, but emergency services are there, and just caution to approach that area with care. Bit of rain and mist inland KZN around the Pietermaritzburg areas this morning, so drive carefully. Also a breakdown to watch for at Linfield Park on your way to Durban. Traffic after Ashburton just starting to slow up. And Cape Town, a lot of requests about this coming into the traffic desk. The state of Baden-Powell. Baden-Powell is open at Khayelitsha. We saw protesting last night, but the road is open through that area this morning, although that is subject to change at short notice. And given the winds, strong winds yesterday, there is some sand that's blown onto Baden-Powell at both Momobisi and at Coastal Park, so drive carefully. Just a quick one, the M7 up at Mitchell's Plain staying closed. It's extensive closure both ways between the Cedars Avenue and Morgansteer, and already quite busy just looping around the alternative routes in that part of Mitchell's Plain. I'm Rob Byrne. SAFM Sunrise starts now.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
7 after 6, good morning. Welcome to SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Glad you're with us this morning. How are you feeling sort of about the 30 years of democracy? And I've been thinking about it for a little bit. I mean, tomorrow is 30 years, the first day. I think that most people voted or tried to vote. Remember the long queues, remember the excitement. I was very young. I was just out of school. And it was just so exciting. I think everybody was excited one way or another about what was happening, what was going to happen, how different things were going to be. And yet now, and I know there are many strong views about where we are as a country, and I understand that, but I kind of feel that it's just sort of subdued, like just kind of, you know, people are talking about it, but I don't get a sense of any kind of energy or, what's that word, gees or vibe or anything like that. You know, just sort of just sort of, well, it's another Saturday public holiday kind of strange kind of feeling, which is a bit disappointing in a way. I think if you had to look at 1994, where we were then, and I mean, some people were very scared. There was a lot going on, remember, all the people who used to talk about finding canned food, tin food, under the house years later because of 1994. Remember those stories? Anyway, and you just sort of look at it now, and I think there's a sense of just sort of subdued in a strange way. No sort of anticipation of tomorrow. I don't know. You tell me what you think. For the last 2 years, we've been following the story around the Inori Tavern, the 22 young people, most of them under the age of 18, who died, who passed away in the tavern in such strange and horrible circumstances. And the Human Rights Commission releasing their report into what happened. And basically, some of the stuff is so obvious, you know it. Everyone knows it. There's been no enforcement of liquor laws. It's as simple as that. The South African Police Service just failed. The Eastern Cape Liquor Board failed. Just did not actually do their job. And the community had complained about this tavern, by the way, and no one seemed to do anything. And there's a sort of passing the buck. No, you must go to the council. You must do this. You must do... I would think, it would seem to me that if a police officer goes past a tavern and sees a teenager coming out, you stop your car and you go in. And if you see that there are obviously teenagers there, you shut it down for the night. Or you ask everybody involved for their ID and you start a case, do something. And I mean, I can't imagine the frustration of the people there who did complain and nothing happened. There's been no comment yet from the Eastern Cape Liquor Board about this because they're also to blame. They seem to have a situation where they don't have enough liquor tavern inspectors. They've basically got 1/3 of the number they're supposed to have. And despite that, over the last few years, they've actually issued 1,600 new licenses, despite having not enough inspectors to basically conduct inspections of the taverns that are open. I mean, that seems mad to me. And one of the things around this is that, the people in charge aren't necessarily responding. So as I say, the Eastern Cape Liquor Board say that they're hoping to respond on Monday. I'm sorry to be so cynical, but I won't be holding my breath, okay? We will try again on Sunday. We will try again on Monday for Tuesday morning to speak to them, and I'm hoping that they respond, but I'm not convinced that they will. The other questions around the health department, how the health department in the Eastern Cape has dealt with the parents here and just not told them really what made their children die. I mean, just the most terrible thing, really, and the Human Rights Commission has very strong comments to make about how the health department has treated the parents. I still can't get to the bottom of that. Former President Thabo Mbeki, he was in Soweto yesterday, Jabulani Moore on the campaign trail for the ANC. He's been talking a lot about this. I mean, it's interesting because he, at times has been critical of the ANC. And even yesterday, there was kind of, if you followed the former president, you kind of know he never gives you, wholesome praise. There's always a little bit of something. And he said, one of the quotes yesterday was, "There are those who are corrupt who are a part of the party. We need to get rid of them. I will urge you, Sowetans, when you go to the polls, do what you are supposed to do." And I presume he means vote for the ANC, but he's still making a series of other comments then. He's been critical of Phala, which is back in the news today. He was asked about former President Jacob Zuma, who, as you know, is leading the MK party, Umkhonto weSizwe, and Mbeki says the ANC has been doing the right thing because Zuma hasn't been expelled, but has been suspended. Meanwhile, talking of Zuma, by the way, the Constitutional Court has given the former President Zuma, I've got to get my former presidents in the right order this morning, has given former President Zuma until Tuesday to respond to that Electoral Commission appeal or request for clarity on the law around whether or not Zuma can actually be a candidate for MK in Parliament. Julius Malema, the leader of the EFF, he's been talking over the last couple of days, and he was talking at a big seminar yesterday. He was asked about the funding for the EFF, and he said that they got a 60 million rand loan from Standard Bank. He said they'd actually asked for 100 million rand. News 24 is reporting this. But they got 60 million rand. And he also says, they got a lot of money from the sort of government grant. There's Electoral Commission grant for political parties. And I thought that was very interesting. And just to let you know, by the way, as you know, we're trying to speak to as many of the sort of political parties as we can ahead of the elections. And today it is the turn of the EFF. Their provincial leader, Nkululeko Dunga, will be in our studio here from 8 o'clock. So I'm looking forward to that. Other issues going on at the moment, and I see that the Public Enterprises Portfolio Committee in Parliament has referred the Takatso SAA deal to the Special Investigating Unit. Now, it's not clear if the SIU will actually investigate, but they've said they would like that to happen. And I think for Pravin Gordhan, that's a big sort of, I think he'll be upset about that. The Minister of Public Enterprises who pushed that, and that deal, of course, has fallen through. Lots of other things to talk about this morning. It's good to hear from you. You know the number 086 000 2032, SMS 41391. You tweet SFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes. Send your WhatsApp voice notes to 0614 104 107. Good morning. It's Friday. It's the day before our 30th anniversary of our democracy. Good morning.
Get your payments done with the utmost security and convenience when you purchase a TV license now. With our new secure payment systems with a one-time PIN, OTP feature, and the choice of receiving your OTP via SMS or email, you can ensure prompt and secure payments. The additional use of capture will protect you against spam and automated data attractions. With TV licenses, you can enjoy watching all your favorite shows or movies that matter to you. Get yours today. Visit www.tvlic.co.za.
Any person aggrieved by any political advertisement or political election broadcast that is broadcast by SAFM may lodge a complaint within 5 days from broadcast with the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, ICASA. To lodge your complaint, please contact ICASA's Compliance Department via telephone number on 012 568 3233. That's 012 568 3233. Or email broadcastingcompliance@icasa.org.za. That's broadcastingcompliance@icasa.org.za. Alternatively, complaintsccc@icasa.org.za. That's complaintsccc@icasa.org.za.
The Smiling One achieved a big smile in their own backyard after a narrow 1-0 victory against Masandawana. Kabuyelo says they will dish out orders in Loftus to book the VIP ticket to the final. But Red and Yellow Tunisian gear plan to continue where they left off, to silence Rulani and his boys. This is the second leg of the Total Energies CAF Champions League semi-final. Experience the exhilaration of African football. Mamelodi Sundowns FC clashes with ES Tunis FC. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. This Friday, 26 April at 7:30 p.m. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Loved You. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
The Daily News Diary on SAFM.
And Musa, good morning. Happy Friday.
Good morning, Stephen. Happy Friday to you too.
A lot going on. There's the big 30th anniversary tomorrow, and Pala back in the news today.
Yes, the three accused, they will be appearing at the Bela Bela Magistrates Court in Limpopo. So also expecting a trial date to be announced very soon.
And that trial, of course, will be fascinating to see what comes out of that.
Indeed.
What else is coming up today?
Well, we're also looking into findings released in that scathing report by the South African Human Rights Commission into the Inyobeni tragedy, which left the 21 young people, including minors, dead. The failures by police, social services, the Eastern Cape Liquor Board and other authorities just in ensuring that regulations relating to alcohol sales and consumption were properly enforced. Did you want to say something?
No, go on.
Okay. There's a briefing by the Department of Water and Sanitation on the planned closure of the Lesotho Highlands water tunnel, that for 6 months. And apparently this water shutdown could affect Johannesburg and parts of the Free State. And it's understood that this is due to critical maintenance work that needs to be conducted on the 37-kilometer Lesotho Highlands water project tunnel that's expected to begin in October and end on the 31st of March 2025. The Gauteng Education MEC, Matome Chilwane, will also today introduce an independent law firm that is to investigate the deaths of the 2 Davidton Skills School learners who drowned during a discipline camp at the Rock Falls Adventure Ranch in Centurion earlier this month. And Chilwane having said that the trip was not sanctioned and there were no teachers as well as lifeguards present. In court in the Northern Cape, 8 Nigerians will be appearing for a bail application after they allegedly damaged a national key point, and the group allegedly stormed the Kimberley police station, breaking down windows and damaging vehicles. This after their friend was arrested for allegedly being in possession of drugs, as well as the state is expected to hand in more bank records of one of the accused in relation to the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial. That's when it resumes in the High Court in Pretoria this morning.
And Musa, thank you very much. We'll be listening on the radio 18 minutes after 6.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
All right, let's have a look at your weather around the country this morning. Tshwane, partly cloudy, isolated showers, thunder showers, 13 and 27. Johannesburg, partly cloudy, isolated showers and thunder showers for 12 and 25. Vereeniging, partly cloudy, isolated showers and thunder showers, 12 and 26. Very late in the year for thunder showers. Bombela, morning fog, otherwise cloudy, isolated showers and thunder showers, 18 and 24. Polokwane, partly cloudy, isolated showers, thunder showers, 15 and 27. Mahakeng, partly cloudy, 14 and 29. Vryburg, fine, partly cloudy in the afternoon, 13 and 31. Mangaung, fine, partly cloudy in the afternoon, 7 and 28. Kimberley, fine, partly cloudy in the afternoon, 9 and 29. Uppington, fine, 14 and 33. Cape Town, partly cloudy, a moderate to fresh southeasterly wind, 16 and 23. George, partly cloudy, isolated showers and rain, a light and variable wind, 14 and 19. Gqeberha, cloudy, scattered showers and rain, a moderate to fresh southeasterly, 16 and 21. East London, cloudy, scattered showers and rain, a light southwesterly wind, 17 and 21. eThekwini, cloudy, scattered showers, rain, a moderate to fresh southerly wind, 19 and 25. Richards Bay, cloudy, scattered showers and rain, a moderate to fresh southerly wind, 21 and 25. And Pietermaritzburg, morning fog patches, otherwise cloudy, scattered showers and rain, 15 and 22.
Attention to all music lovers. The highly anticipated Metro FM Music Awards are finally here.
Yo, y'all ready?
Purchase your tickets to gain access to the awards ceremony and the live concert happening on the 27th of April 2024 at Mbombela Stadium, Mpumalanga.
Yo, we about to have some fun in here.
You can now secure your tickets from 300 Rand at www.computicket.co.za.
Yeah, man, this is a big night.
With a star-studded lineup of DJs and live performances, don't miss your chance to be part of this unforgettable celebration of talent and music excellence.
Come on, Mbombela, come through. Let's do this.
Hashtag MMA24, Black to the Future. Metro FM, it's where you want to be.
Get to Discount Pharmacies for best buys for the whole family. Save R19.99 when you buy 2 Pampers Premium Care Nappies Value Packs for R499.99. Get assorted Nestle 250-gram Cerelac Baby Cereal for just R42.99. Buy any 4 110ml Squish 100% puree pouches for R50 and save R11.96. Valid until 12 May at Discount Pharmacies. Better health starts here.
For 120 years, Rhodes University has shaped history. From Sir George Corey's pioneering 62 conversations capturing the early history of the Eastern Cape, to the first email to be sent in South Africa, and now leading the way in nanotechnology. Rhodes University is more than an educational institution. We are a legacy in motion. Be part of the evolving legacy. Rhodes University, where leaders learn.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
21 minutes after 6 in the US, and I think in many places around the world, there's outrage at a decision by an appeals court in New York to overturn the rape conviction of the former movie mogul Harvey Weinstein. Weinstein was accused and charged with a series of incidents of rape and sexual abuse. When it emerged, he had been abusing young women who often wanted to play certain roles in the movies he was financing. This led to the Me Too movement, with claims being made against a group of powerful and famous men in the US and in other places. In some cases, it led to convictions. Weinstein is still in jail this morning because he was convicted of another rape by another court in Los Angeles. Sanusha Naidu is a foreign policy and political analyst. She joins us now. Sanusha, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen.
The story of Harvey Weinstein is a sort of story of our times. An older man was abusing younger women. He was powerful. He got away with it. Finally, people started to speak out. Some people had known about this for a long time. He was charged and convicted. This decision must be a sort of body blow, a huge, almost reversal to the Me Too movement.
Absolutely, Stephen. And if you look at the judgment that was written, I think it was a judgment of majority in basically overturning the conviction, in a sense that they felt that he wasn't given the kind of trial fairness in terms of the victims that were in court to testify against him, and they felt that there needs to be a new trial. So it was a very small majority of 4 justices that believed in overturning the conviction against 3. I think when you read the minority judgment, which came out quite scathingly, it actually talks to what you raised. This whole movement around sexual violence, around sexual abuse, things that have been happening in major industries with regard to Harvey Wallerstein and what's going on there. But the problem with this debate is that it seems as if the courts are coming in now to litigate on issues very much in terms of whether the courts are creating the kind of precedent in terms of how they're interpreting the need to start looking at the legal system and how that needs to move forward in terms of the situation and the kind of social context that's happening with regard to these kinds of criminal acts and these issues of sexual violence versus how they're interpreting the law. And that seems to be the tension, I think, in both the majority ruling as well as the minority judgment. And this seems to be where I think the real tension lies, not just in the US, but I think in South Africa and elsewhere as well, is the interpretation of the statutes and the legal process, the legal precedent that has been set in law, and whether or not it's conforming to how these issues are actually evolving in society and the movements against what has been mutedness around sexual violence against women and children.
I mean, there's been an important case coming through our Supreme Court of Appeal this week on exactly this issue around whether foreplay means consent or not. And in the end, the Supreme Court of Appeal said it doesn't, specifically because there had been explicit messages by the victim in this case that she did not want to continue. She did not want to go the whole way. Do you think that the Me Too movement and everything that started around Weinstein, despite this sort of this appeal, has actually changed things? I mean, has it led to changes in the law in different parts of the world, or at least changes in the conversation? It can feel sometimes it has and sometimes it hasn't.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really critical because these are supposed to be precedent cases that's supposed to then go back to your statutes and see how these statutes may actually be aligned to what is happening in society. And that's why you have these precedent cases. I think the one that you mentioned with regard to the consent is really important in the context of South Africa because it's a big issue, in terms of how the law has been defined and how the law has been designed. And as society evolves, your legal frameworks have to evolve in terms of taking into account these kinds of issues, but also creating precedent. So I think there's a bit of perhaps in certain parts of the world, there's a bit of a kind of catch up by the law to try and see how they align to the idea that these kinds of legal frameworks that were set in place maybe 30, 40 years ago, have very important implications in terms of moving forward. I'll give you the other example, Stephen, and that is Roe versus Wade in the US, where the whole question about the right of abortion and when does the mother has the right to make that decision to abort the child, and that has been a big issue in the U.S. because it's also set. It's been challenged in terms of what certain states in the U.S. that have decided to overturn or to review that decision, because it was a big movement when that decision came in the U.S. in the 70s, and it had a massive impact on the religious institutions in the U.S. And now we see certain states in the U.S. becoming much more less kind of taking it forward, but more conservative in their kind of thinking about the rights of women and how that may play out. So I think these are things where the courts become critical interlocutors in terms of how they set the legal framework and the interpretation of the legal framework in terms of understanding what's happening in society and how they modernize that in terms of rights and particularly in terms of the particular individuals and groups that need to actually be protected in those spaces.
Sanusha Naidu, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Foreign policy and political analyst, 28 after 6.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Lots of cricket this morning.
Yes, and the Dolphins pulling off a surprising win, outplaying the Warriors in a stunning final play. All happened at the Cricket South Africa T20 Challenge semi-final, Kingsmead, the venue in Durban last night. Now it was Khaya Zondo. He struck a brilliant 49 in just 23 balls, giving the Dolphins inning a boost. Now set a challenging target, 162 for victory. Zondo struck 5 fours and 3 sixes as he helped the Dolphins to 64 in just 32 balls for the first wicket. In addition, he cracked 3 huge sixes in an innings that earned him the Batter of the Match award. Soccer action, Phil Foden scored twice as Manchester City closed the gap on Premier League leaders Arsenal to 1 point with a 4-0 victory at Brighton. Arsenal had moved 4 clear of City with a midweek win over Chelsea, while Liverpool, they slipped up, and that's against Merseyside rivals Everton. Pep Guardiola's side responded with a fine performance, keeping their title fate in their own hands. Here's City boss Pep Guardiola.
We know that we don't win or we draw, we will not be chance to fight until the end. So, of course, the pressure is there. Otherwise, we cannot perform in that one. So, 5 games left and on to next. All I can say.
Tennis action, Rafa Nadal breezed to a straight sets victory over 16-year-old Darwin Blanche to reach the Madrid Open second round as he begins his farewell appearance in the Spanish capital. The 37-year-old was not fully fit, but he demolished his American opponent 6-1, 6-love in 1 hour, 3 minutes. And some golf news, Live Golf CEO Greg Norman confirming that he would be 100% open to engaging with talks with Rory McIlroy over a switch to the circuit in the wake of the Northern Irishman. He vows to stay put on the PGA Tour. Live Chief Norman says a concrete proposal was never tabled to McIlroy.
Look, I'll make the comment. If you look back over that time period of that dialogue that was going place, there wasn't one comment about Liv. So Liv never put an offer to him. We didn't need to make a comment about this. This is just typical white noise that gets out there in the industry. If Rory was willing to sit down and have a conversation with us, would we be happy to sit down with him? 100%. No different than any other player who'd be interested in coming on playing with us.
More sport, top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. In the next half hour, we'll talk about the rise of the extortion economy in Cape Town. I mean, how it is that people stop private cars driving down roads in Khayelitsha. That's next. You're with SFM leading the conversation, 6:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, the former President Jacob Zuma and the Umkhonto weSizwe Party have 5 days in which to submit answering papers to the Constitutional Court to oppose the Electoral Commission's application. The Commission is seeking to appeal the Electoral Court's ruling in favour of the MK Party's inclusion of Zuma on its candidates list for next month's elections. The 3 men accused of theft of foreign currency at President Cyril Ramaphosa's Palapala farm are this morning expected to appear in the Bela Magistrates Court in Limpopo. They allegedly stole $580,000 at the president's farm in February 2020. And some economists have described as a merger proposal between Anglo American and the world's largest mining house, the BHP Group, as a potential mega deal that could reshape the global mining industry. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Noticeably lighter volumes around the Gauteng highways this morning. The big standout really is the N3. There's something's happened at Heldenase interchange. N3 coming out of Germiston, coming out of Alberton on the N12. Both of those highways jamming into Elands and up past Cement Factory and on your way towards the M2. So it's reasonably heavy compared to the rest of the highway network. Just getting a report of a breakdown on the N1 south at Rigel. So traffic coming out of Pretoria just starting to be held up there. Durban side this morning. Traffic just starting to back up now on the N2 northbound. It's arriving a little bit later than than normal, but just moving through Spaghetti Junction towards the roadworks near Westwood Mall. That is just starting to slow down. That'll push back towards the M7. The M7 into Pinetown looking sluggish this morning. Huntsdeban through towards the N3 highway. That could often point to a broken down vehicle in just a single lane section. It's got that feel about it. And Cape Town, Baden-Powell Drive. If you're just joining us now, looking for updates there, Baden-Powell is open. Protesting last night, but the road open through Khayelitsha. Motorists are moving along that section. There is sand at Monwabisi and sand at Coastal Park to watch out for as well. And the M7 closed. You're still with us at Mitchell's Plain. Full closure both ways between Morgansteer and the Cedars Avenue. So there'll just be some disruption for traffic around that part of Mitchell's Plain as you pick up the alternative local routes. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
And Taoleng Lechele, good morning.
Morning, Stephen, and happy Friday.
How are the markets looking this morning?
So global markets ending the day in negative territory, U.S. stocks taking a knock on the back of a sharp slowdown in growth and persistent sticky inflation. Now, this resulted in the Dow Jones heading towards its biggest loss for the year, losing about 600 points in yesterday's trade. The sour mood has trickled down into the JSE. The all-share snapped its 3 days of gains, closing 0.25% in the red. Over in Asia, however, sentiment is totally different. It is positive, with most indices trading in the green. Markets on that end digesting earning reports and shrugging off that slowing growth in the US. Investors also taking in monetary policy moves as the Bank of Japan decided to keep interest rates unchanged at its meeting today. In currency action, the rand is on track to end the week stronger, making gains against the greenback. It's currently trading at 19.04 to the dollar.
And the US economy, a slow start to the year, its economy expanding by just 1.6% in the first quarter.
1.6%, which was way below economist estimates of 2.5%. The U.S. has pointed to decelerations in consumer spending, exports, and a downturn in federal government spending. Now, alongside the downbeat growth rate for the first quarter, the report showed that consumer prices increased at 3.4%, well above the previous quarter's 1.8% acceleration. This has now raised concerns over persistent inflation and put into question whether the Fed will be able to cut rates anytime soon.
And then Alphabet and Microsoft delivering stellar results. I mean, it's all in that space nowadays, isn't it?
Literally. Now, that results season in the U.S. is in full swing, and U.S. tech companies are in focus. Today, earlier on in the week, we even spoke about Meta. Now, the Magnificent Seven, I'll be unpacking Alphabet and Microsoft's latest numbers. Google's parent company, Alphabet, has delivered upbeat numbers, reporting a 15% jump in revenue. This is the fastest rate of growth since early 2022. The group has also decided to reward shareholders, saying it'll be paying out its first dividend this year. Now, this performance was due to soaring profits from its cloud business. A similar trend was seen in Microsoft's numbers. The strength of its cloud operations, boosted by its push into AI, has helped it deliver strong earnings as well. Now, both companies are still very, very bullish on artificial intelligence, planning to allocate a large sum of capex towards AI this year as well.
And Taoleng Lechele, thanks very much indeed. Back, of course, in an hour. More business news through the day here on SAFM.
Africa Update on SAFM Sunrise, a continental overview of current African affairs.
Russ Advocate Sipho Mantula, good morning.
Steve, refreshing morning and Jumbo Africa to the listeners.
Okay, in Haiti, big developments there. The former Prime Minister finally resigning. The swearing-in ceremony of the Transitional Council, though, it hasn't yet happened.
Stephen, it did not happen yesterday at the National Palace in the capital city of Haiti, Port-au-Prince, in the fear of the gangs. Remember that, Stephen, the gangs have controlled most of the territories that surround the palace. And also you will understand that even many people, what they've picked up yesterday is that there was a lot of bullets around the parliament and the palace. And that shows high level of insecurity. Others are saying that it now dates back to 1986 of what happened. Now, the state of emergency has been declared in Haiti until the 3rd of May. So there's still challenge, Stephen. There's no government, even if the Prime Minister has resigned. You don't have a transitional council. It's the gangs who are ruling the capital city of Haiti now.
And then in Chad, the US planning to temporarily withdraw some of its troops from Chad.
Stephen, they are withdrawing practically, but technically they are still advisors for Chad. But also remember, Chad is undergoing elections next month on the 6th of May. So they say it is a temporary step. But we know, Stephen, what has happened so far in the neighboring Niger. The US have moved out due to the misunderstanding on their mission there. Now, Idris Deby is running for this election next month, and he has been moving towards Russia also. That last month he sent a letter through his army chief to the US to move away from the Adiji Kosi air base, which US has been occupying. So it shows, Stephen, that these colonial powers are starting to move back now to to most of their countries, because it appears their military cooperation has ended. Hence, I spoke about Niger, Burkina Faso, as well as Mali.
And then in Nigeria, there was severe rain to a prison, and 100 prisoners ran away.
Stephen, this has happened before. Nigeria has experienced this in 2022, and also they say since 2020, when they look at their stats, 5,000 inmates have escaped. Now, what happened this week is that there was a severe rain in Suleja prison. That's where parts of the prison infrastructure was damaged, and the prisoners took advantage of that, Stephen. But out of 118, 10 has been recaptured so far. But it appears that the security services in Abuja, they are searching for these inmates, Stephen, because this is a worrying. It shows that maintenance of correctional services, if they are not being, if it's not up to date, will have such inmates escaping, and at the same time, the victims and the community will be under threat.
And then in Tanzania, the Prime Minister, Kassim Majaliwa, telling Parliament that El Nino's had a huge impact there.
Stephen, there's ongoing rain in Tanzania, Dar es Salaam. They've experienced a high rainfall that it has closed schools, bridges have been destroyed, and now 150 people declared dead so far. Stephen, remember we've been talking about Kenya, Burundi recently, but now we see Tanzania also experiencing the same floods. That they are also appealing to the communities living in the low-lying areas to move to the higher ground, and as well as to need more support. 51,000 households, Stephen, are affected by these heavy rains in Tanzania, Dar es Salaam.
And then, Sipho, you remind us, 30 years ago tomorrow, we voted for the first time.
Stephen, this was very important. The first democratic elections in South Africa that was held after a very, we can say, intense talks of CODESA 1, CODESA 2 World Trade Center between 1991-93, and only on this day, Stephen, and moving towards the 27th of April, it was declared the election date, but also become a Freedom Day in South Africa. So all roads, Stephen, are leading to the Union Building tomorrow, where there will be national celebrations to reflect and deflect of the 30 years of freedom and democracy in South Africa. Asante sana AG, as was leading the conversation, SAFM, observing the Freedom Month.
Ras Advocate Sipho Mantula, thank you very much indeed. Back on Monday, an important weekend ahead, 20 minutes to 7.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
KG on the line from Mangaung. KG, hi, good morning. That big Nkandla gathering of Umkhonto weSizwe yesterday.
I found it very fascinating, Stephen, listening to the host there, telling his subjects that he wants to liberate and free them.
Mm-hmm.
So, if I was a psychologist, I would study these people who attended that gathering. I would study those people to establish their way of thinking. What informs this belief that they have that a person who for 9 years had the control panels of this country at disposal and didn't do what he is telling them now that he is going to do, and then they happily accept it without questioning anything, without critically analyzing anything, but to say this person had an opportunity for 9 years and he couldn't do that, which he is saying now, if we can another opportunity, he is going to do it. Why couldn't he do it in the 9 years? What was he busy with?
Yeah.
Because he was sitting with the whole control board.
No, sure. KG, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, people have a right to vote for who they want to vote and to believe what they want, but I hear the criticism, and it's interesting. The former president, Jacob Zuma, has said that, he feels he was sort of interrupted or removed too early, but I hear your point. I think there's going to be a lot of conversation around MK over the next few days. 086 000 2032.
Rise to the occasion with Season 5 of The Taste Master SA, Tuesday evenings at 7 on SABC2. Follow the delicious journey as 14 of the country's best baking talents compete to impress the judges and claim the title. Only one will be crowned the Taste Master and win the grand prize valued at more than 400,000 Rand. That's Tuesdays at 7, repeat Wednesdays at 1 and Sundays at 4 p.m. on SABC2.
Hello, Your Choice Hotline.
Hi, I need you to help me make a choice.
Well, with Ford, you get to make your own choices. Like on a new Ford Ranger, Ford Puma, Ford Everest, and the Ford Tornado bus. There's a flexible deal for every budget at your nearest Ford dealership today. Limited time offer. Your Ford, your choice. T&Cs apply.
Mama Kiti, I heard Randwater talking on the radio about how dangerous it is for people to encroach on their pipeline servitude.
Yes, those high-pressure Randwater pipelines are under the ground distributing megaliters of water. When people build on top of the pipeline, Randwater is unable to conduct maintenance on the pipeline, which has a negative impact on water provision. Pipelines can burst without warning. People could get seriously injured or worse.
Yes, people can die from a bursting pipe. That is why people need to understand that Randwater servitude is where a Randwater pipeline is located. If we build our houses or businesses on a Randwater servitude, then we are encroaching on that servitude. They say if communities want to know whether they have encroached over servitudes, they should look for the Randwater beacons.
The beacons indicate the presence of Randwater pipelines under the ground. They're rectangular, made of concrete, are painted either white or blue, and have the Randwater logo on them.
Let's take a walk around our area to see if there are any Randwater beacons so that we can also tell the neighbors.
Randwater, celebrating 120 years of existence and still finding new ways to provide clean, portable bulk water.
After a 0-0 draw in Cairo, action continues in Kumasi between Dreams FC and Zamalek SC. The Ghanaian outfit want to show their visitors why they are known as Still Believe. They believe they will triumph, but the Royal Club insists they will graduate to the final. This is the second leg of the Total Energies CAF Confederation Cup semi-final. Catch Dreams FC versus Zamalek Sporting Club live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 this Sunday, 28 April at 6 p.m. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
SAFM 104 to 107. Nationwide.
7:15, good morning. A new report showing how deep the roots of extortion networks in the city of Cape Town have now gone. Criminal gangs are using violence. They're able to extort money from nightclubs and restaurants and even coffee shops in the Cape Town CBD. Also, the report says transport businesses, even private vehicles, are subject to extortion and that the construction mafia is growing in the city of Cape Town. Jenny Arish-Koboshiani is a researcher at the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organised Crime. She wrote the report. She joins us now. Jenny, good morning.
Morning, and morning to your listeners.
What do these gangs do? How do they extort money from businesses in the Cape Town CBD?
So I think you have a number of different types of ways in which these gangs operate. I think one of the common characteristics is they are generally all heavily armed. So and that they often are armed with firearms, and they would, for example, in the construction mafia, we know that they would go onto sites heavily armed and demand a cut of the project. In the case of the CBD, you would have the actual businesses being approached by heavily armed men who say, employ our security company or our protection, otherwise you're going to have problems. And then you have a similar kind of pattern emerging in the township enterprise economies where businesses would be targeted and told, pay a protection fee. There, very often, there is no security provision offered. It's just like pay a protection fee in order to operate. And then you have vehicles being pulled off the road by certain taxi people saying, and they would be impounded and taken to the taxi ranks and then forced to pay. So I think you have all of them are use violence or the threat of violence. All of them are heavily armed, but different strategies in different areas.
Is there anything the victims can do? And I mean, I know in some cases we've seen vigilantes being employed, which is not a good thing either. But I mean, is there anything the victims can do to protect themselves? If you're running a coffee shop or just driving down a road and someone with a, heavy gun comes and says, we want a cut, you're probably just going to do it.
I think that is exactly the problem. I think that very often victims are confronted with heavily armed people. They're not necessarily armed themselves, and many of them just agree to pay that extortion fee, and some don't even report it. Report the extortion. So I think that there are some things that victims can do, but I think that those things need to be done in concert with support networks that provide victims support to be able to do that. And one of it is to report it. I think we're seeing an increasing trend where as extortion becomes normalized, not just in Cape Town but throughout the country, people are actually succumbing to it and then not reporting it. And I think reporting it becomes critically important, because not only can you try and provide some support to that victim, but also you can begin to understand the patterns of how extortion is unfolding.
And the police, I mean, obviously this is a weakness in policing. And I mean, we've had so many calls from people over the years who say, the taxi industry is taking cars here, or refusing to let me transport my workers there, or even members of my family. And the police, I mean, you know this better than I do, Jenny, frankly, seem to do nothing.
I think we have seen some areas where there have been some significant arrests of people involved in extortion. But I think in other instances, we've seen the police not responding as effectively as they should to it, or even in some instances trying to negotiate between the extortionists and the victims. I think there's one incident in our report where a construction company was extorted by people in the taxi industry, and when the police arrived, what they did was negotiate the price down rather than deal with extortionists. And I think one of the issues for us around extortion is that once extortion becomes entrenched, it becomes that more difficult to deal with. And I think what needs to be happening is, as extortion arises, we need a response from the police. We have seen people, as I said, some of the key extortionists being arrested, but unless the police are able to deal with extortion on the ground, new extortionists just emerge to take the place of those extortionists. I think we've also seen in the city that the city itself has tried to address some of these issues. They've set up a hotline. They have offered to provide security at quite considerable expense. In some of the areas where this extortion is happening.
And very quickly, if you can, Jenny, why does it seem to happen more in some places than in others? I don't know if this is also happening in sort of entertainment places in Joburg as well. For example, the construction mafia, we all know, started, it seems, in KwaZulu-Natal and not in other places.
I think that there are often particular circumstances that arises, and we know that the nightlife economy is particularly vulnerable for this. So in Joburg, in the early 90s, we saw similar kind of extortion happening in some of the nightlife economy in Joburg, and I think that eventually, because of changes that were taking place in Joburg, it got more difficult to do. But I think in Cape Town, for example, you have a very strong gang problem. And I think what we're finding is that most of these extortion networks operating have links into different gangs, and those gangs have a significant role in becoming both extortionists but also enforcers for people involved in extortion. In KwaZulu-Natal, I think there was a particular kind of ideology that was developed around the extortion mafia, which then bolstered that extortion mafia, and it spread throughout the country.
Jenny Arish-Goboshiani, thank you. Researcher at the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organised Crime. 8 minutes to 7.
SAFM guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
There's just been quite a big collision scene at the Buccleuch interchange, top end of Joburg. So it would seem as if you're on the Mike 1 getting up into Buccleuch, it's going to impact you. If you're on the N1 from Ravoni or the N3 from Limbro Park, those ramps, it would appear that this crash is just where those ramps off those highways come onto the M1 at Buccleuch. So multiple routes are starting to backlog there. 3 lanes of the M1 heading through Buccleuch up towards Allendale are currently closed off. So if you can get onto some alternative routes, that might be a good idea. It'll become the top story pretty soon, I think. The N3 going north is heavy this morning out of Germiston and Alberton up into an issue around the Heldenace interchange, and then after that it stays busy as you pick up the left lane closure at Van Buren for the long-term roadworks. Breakdown on the N1 coming out of Pretoria just down by Rigel Avenue, so quite a queue that's pushing back already to Linwood Road, and there's some heavy traffic coming south as well, SK and Pathvalley to Vanderhof, and also the Dustport Tunnel, very heavy queues this morning as well, heading off Bremer onto Transaranya. Motorists driving into Durban's Pinetown area on the M7. There's a queue and a half from Hans Detman moving up towards the N3. The M7 looking pretty heavy this Friday. Bluff-bound queues from Queensborough down towards Bel Air and Wakesley. That's a little bit worse than you might be expecting on a Friday morning. And Cape Town, traffic all over the N7 route, northbound from Vangay Mall up towards the N2, and southbound Frans Conradi down to Four Trekker Road in Goodwood. That's an unusual queue for this time of morning as well. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The cost of living crisis is real. Here's what one Outsurance client did about it.
I'm Amy. I'm 26 from Kenilworth. When I got my 2022 Ford EcoSport, the immediate thought was to phone Outsurance, and I pay only 819 Rand per month. No insurers were able to beat or match the premium that I'm currently paying.
Want a car insurance premium that'll blow your mind? SMS out to 30754 now for a quote and to find out about included benefits like panic assistance that sends the nearest medical or armed response unit to you wherever you may be 24/7. Here's Yusuf.
45 years old from Tygerberg, Western Cape. I pay 700 Rand for my Polo 1.6 2021 model. If you haven't called Outsurance yet, definitely get in touch.
Give it a go. SMS out to 30754 now. That's out to 30754. Outsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's, and limits apply. Premiums are risk profile dependent and reviewed annually. Client comments do not constitute financial advice.
RSP Pekane have a great gift for their home fans. They want to book a spot in the final, but USM Alger says not under their watch. Who will be honored as the champs of the North African Derby? This is the second leg of the Total Energies CAF Confederation Cup semi-final. RSP Pekane battles it out with USM Alger, live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, this Sunday, 28 April at 9 p.m. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Come test drive the new Ford Territory, the family SUV with a spacious interior, 5 partial leather seats for your family, and a 12.3-inch touchscreen. Get yours at launch prices from only 590,000 Rand, including an optional service plan for a limited time only. Get to your nearest Ford dealer and test drive the new Ford Territory today. T&Cs apply.
Big stories of the day. Hashtag SAFM Sunrise.
5 minutes to 7. Good morning. You know the number 086 000 2032. Extortion already messages coming through after that conversation around the extortion economy in Cape Town. Jenny Aris Koboshiani explaining how bad it is and how so many people are targeted. And earlier this week, in fact, 2 armed security guards were shot dead. They were escorting workers to fix a sewage pipe in Philippi in Cape Town. As you know, in Cape Town now, armed guards are often sent to escort workers when they go and fix infrastructure. The mayor of Cape Town for the DA is Jordan Hill Lewis. Mr. Mayor, good morning.
Good morning to you, Stephen.
Do you know why someone would attack a group of workers who are trying to fix a sewage pipe? I mean, what the motive would be here?
It's a great question. We suspect that it is extortion gangs who believe or insist that any work that happens in their territory must be paid to allow that to happen. We have had even smaller examples than this, where just the replacement of manhole covers, teams going around replacing manhole covers have been told, unless you pay us 3,000 Rand, you better better get out of here. You're not going to work unless you pay us. So that kind of thing is unfortunately rife at the moment, and sometimes with violent and tragic consequences, as in this week.
In this case, you've offered, I think it's R100,000 reward for information leading to the conviction of the people who did this. When you do that, do you get a response from the community? I can imagine how scared people must be to sort of say, look, this is who did it. We know who did it because they extort money from us too.
Yes, we do get a response, actually. It's actually one of the few ways that we can try to hit back. It's very difficult to combat extortion because people don't know the names and identities, and even when they do, they are too terrified to lay criminal cases. They are sometimes very sadly told, don't go to the police station because the extortionists will know that you've laid a case through contacts at the station. But I can tell you that last year we put out the biggest reward that we have ever put out as a city following the murder of one of our workers at a Delft housing project. We may have spoken about that at the time. And it actually worked. We got an informant. We ended up pursuing that information and capturing the person who we believe is responsible, the suspect. So I do think that this is one of the few tools that we have that can really strike a blow back, and so I hope that this reward works. We don't usually offer rewards for when it's not city staff. These were contract staff, as you know, but I just felt very strongly that these contract security guards are really enabling service delivery in some poorer communities in the city, and we owe a duty of care to them as well, and we must seek justice for them.
And the Western Cape Police, and I know, we're in an election, and you're immediately going to say, look, you need more powers over the police in the Western Cape, and I understand that. But is the Western Cape SAPS able to act against this kind of extortion at all?
Well, I actually have a lot of respect for the provincial commissioner. I think he's a very dedicated commissioner and generally does a good job. I understand that the police are chasing a million crises. They've got task teams set up to deal with zama-zamas in Gauteng and kidnapping syndicates all over the country. But my real concern, and I have said this directly to police leadership, is that crime intelligence is just not on this. The only way that we can figure this out is to trace financial flows and intercept cell phones, track people, and only crime intelligence has the capacity to do that. And it just does not seem to me that they're making significant headway on extortion rings.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much indeed. The Mayor of the City of Cape Town is Jordan Hill-Lewis. In a few moments, we'll get some reaction to the Human Rights Commission report and their findings about the Inori Tavern tragedy and how people were treated, how the parents were treated, but also how the community, complained about the tavern and nothing was done. We'll speak to the father of someone who actually passed away. Also, former President Thabo Mbeki in Soweto yesterday. More on that, and a reminder from 8 o'clock, the turn of the EFF as we speak to various political leaders ahead of the elections. You're with SFM leading the conversation. Good morning. It's 7 o'clock.
In our top stories, Constitutional Court extends deadline for respondents in Zuma candidacy appeal, and Palapala farm theft accused expected back in court. Good morning. We start with election news. Former President Jacob Zuma and the Umkhonto weSizwe Party have 5 days in which to submit answering papers to the Constitutional Court to oppose the Electoral Commission's application. The Commission is seeking to appeal the Electoral Court's ruling in favour of the MK Party's inclusion of Zuma on its candidates list for next month's elections. The Constitutional Court has also ordered the Commission to submit answering papers. The legal representatives of Zuma and the MK Party initially said 24 hours was not enough for their clients to make their submissions. The court then extended the deadline from yesterday to Tuesday next week. The Commission had disqualified Zuma because the Apex Court had found him in contempt of court. The three men accused of theft of foreign currency at President Cyril Ramaphosa's Palapala farm are this morning expected to appear in the Bela Magistrates Court in Limpopo. The three face charges of housebreaking, theft and conspiracy to steal. They allegedly stole $580,000 at the president's farm in February 2020. Rendane Ralipaswa reports.
The NPA earlier told court that 2 additional arrests were imminent. This is as they had applied for the extradition of 2 Namibian nationals in connection with the case. 2 of the accused, who are siblings, Floriana and Dinasho Joseph, have been released on bail. Floriana worked at the farm as a domestic worker at the time of the theft. Alleged mastermind Emanuela David has been denied bail. The matter is expected to be referred for trial soon.
Some economists have described a merger proposal between Anglo American and the world's largest mining house, the BHP Group, as a potential mega deal that could reshape the global mining industry. BHP's headquarters is in Melbourne. It's said to be doubling down on its big bet on copper demand, growing exponentially in the global shift away from fossil fuels to electric vehicles and batteries technology. Economist Gary Boyson explains what the unsolicited conditional merger proposal entails.
As part of the deal, they're expecting Anglo to unbundle Anglo American Platinum, so AmPlat, as well as Kumba, and they're really after the underlying copper assets. Those copper assets are obviously key to an electric future. We're looking at EV production and the move towards greener energy. Copper is becoming an incredibly important asset. To complete the transaction will take some time, and they're not factoring in a lot of time value of money at the moment. So let's see if an increased price comes through. But at the moment, a very exciting deal and a massive transaction, probably the biggest mining transaction since Glencore bought Extortion back in 2013.
The second phase of India's parliamentary elections is underway. Analysts will be watching the southwestern coastal state of Kerala, one of India's most highly developed states. Nearly 1 billion people are eligible to vote. The BBC's Nikal Inamda reports.
89 constituencies across some 13 states will go to the polls in the second phase. All eyes are on the southern state of Kerala, where all 20 seats will vote. It's the only province ruled by the left parties and a part of the country in which the ruling BJP has so far been unable to make inroads. Both the ruling BJP and the opposition Congress have raised allegations against each other of causing division on the basis of religion, language and region.
And finally, Hollywood actress Ashley Judd says the overturning of disgraced movie mogul Harvey Weinstein's 2020 rape conviction is a hard day for survivors. The case against Weinstein was a landmark movement in the #MeToo movement. The New York Court of Appeals yesterday ordered a new trial, saying witnesses had prejudiced the original, with claims unrelated to the charges at hand. The 72-year-old remains in prison. He was separately convicted of rape in Los Angeles. Recapping the top story, former President Jacob Zuma and the Umkhonto weSizwe Party have 5 days in which to submit answering papers to the Constitutional Court to oppose the Electoral Commission's application. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you in your SFM Sports Headlines. Soccer, it's an upbeat Rulani Mokoena. He's assuring fans it's going to be a victory for Sundowns in the second leg against Esperance tonight. Plus, the Dolphins, they triumph over the Warriors to clinch their spot in the T20 cricket final. We'll bring you the details just before 7:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. We have this crash in Buccleuch. It doesn't look too serious, but the traffic certainly is. It was one of those collisions that's just blocking multiple lanes. So the N1 coming up from Rivonia, the N3 from Limbro Park, as you get into those ramps to take you onto the N1 Midrand, if you like, towards Allendale, there is some real pressure approaching that. And the Mike 1 getting up from Woodmead through Buccleuch onto the N1, likely to be held up as well. The N3 stays heavy on the run through to Helderdace on towards Van Buren this morning. Durban's issue on that M7 into Pinetown is 2 stationary heavy trucks around the N3. If you're Pinetown bound, that's a queue that extends almost back to north of Dean and North Park. Going the other way, the M7, very heavy this morning between Queensborough and the road works area down around Bel Air and Wakeston. A bit of traffic coming in from Toti as well, Twinny Hill area on the N2 up towards the Isipingo looking busy. Cape Town, a lot of pressure in the heart of Goodwood. The N7, Jakes Kervell Drive, very heavily backed up southbound to 4 Trekker Road. 4 Trekker Road coming through Goodwood into that traffic's quite heavy as well. And AZ Berman coming out of Mitchell's Plain. There's a slow backlog of traffic this morning, queued up through Highlands Drive towards the R300. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
7 after 7, good morning. You're with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Glad you're with us this morning. Well, lots going on. You've already heard about the rise of the extortion economy. People messaging us about how bad it is in places like Khayelitsha, Philippi, and in Nyanga. I think Gugulethu as well, perhaps. Conversations coming up around the Inori Tavern tragedy. The Human Rights Commission have findings there. And still, so much mystery around why it actually is that so many young people died in that. What it is that killed them. And I mean, this is one of the things the Human Rights Commission says, is that the parents were just not treated properly by the health department. We'll speak to one of the parents who lost their child in that. Then former President Thabo Mbeki joining the ANC on the campaign trail in Soweto yesterday. We'll hear from some Kele Maseko about that. There were some questions around former President Zuma for former President Mbeki, and they've had a long and interesting history. So we'll talk about that in the next little while as well. And then from 8:30, by the way, don't forget your story of the week might be a good moment to book your call. Stanza is standing by this morning with Amandla on 086 000 2032. And then, of course, don't forget from 8 o'clock, 8 to 8:30, we'll actually speak to the EFF leader in Gauteng, their Gauteng chair, Nkululeko Dunga. He's also in charge of finance in Ekurhuleni. But we'll speak to him about the elections, as you know, trying to speak to some of the political parties in studio, face-to-face, ahead of the elections. Good morning, 8 after 7.
Join us on Afternoon Express Tuesday at 6 p.m. on S3 as we celebrate Workers' Day. Tatu Mambalani shares how to assert yourself at work without being arrogant, and Amy Kleinhans lets us in on how to beat a bad day at the office. And we're making peanut butter balls for that 3 p.m. brain fog. That's Afternoon Express Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Repeat Sundays at 8:30 a.m. only on S3.
And we would buy 500 cars, and we would buy 500 more. So sell your car for the best price, and we won't think about it twice. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
Character will be tested between the great giants of the beautiful game. RB Leipzig and Borussia Dortmund understand that the first prize is unreachable. However, they want to finish as high as possible. This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Catch RB Leipzig versus Borussia Dortmund on Saturday, 27 April at 3 p.m. Live on SABC3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. # We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Big stories of the day. # SAFM Sunrise.
10 after 7, good morning. The Human Rights Commission has now made a series of findings about the failings by the SA Police Service, by the Eastern Cape Liquor Board and by the Eastern Cape Health Department that led to the deaths of 21 young people in the Inori Tavern in East London 2 years ago. The group was having a pens down party after writing exams. It's emerged that while residents had complained about the tavern, the police seem to have taken no action. The report also finds the Health Department did not treat the parents of the children who died properly. They were not really told of what actually caused the deaths of their children. Kulukile Nkandane is the father of Bongolwetu Nkandane, who was 18 when he passed away in this tragedy. He's one of the parents who's willing to speak to you about what happened and about this report. Mr. Nkandane, sir, good morning to you, and thank you very much indeed for agreeing to speak to us this morning.
Good morning, and good morning to your listeners as well.
This report says the police failed to stop the tavern from selling alcohol to people under the age of 18. I mean, basically, it says government didn't do its job to protect young people. How do you feel about this report this morning?
Well, I think the report is quite interesting because some of the things that it touches on are the things that we as parents have been also complaining about, and we also touched on those things. But we are not legal experts, so we were just talking as parents, not knowing if there were any legal issues that were done in that. But fortunately, now the report itself, it shows that. And it touches quite a lot in a lot of the Eastern Cape Liquor Board, SAP, and the Buffalo City Metro Municipality. Those were the ones that were mentioned a lot in the report, who failed to do their duties legally with regard to the Mbeki Tavern.
I mean, it seems the community had reported problems around the tavern and no one did anything. I mean, people must feel as if no one was listening to them and there was a warning, and now this happened and now people died as a result.
Yes, it has also came out in court, in the trial that was before the court, that the community, they complained a lot with regard to that tavern, to the SAPs, and there were letters that were written by the community to SAPs, not only one, quite a lot of them, including a letter to the Eastern Cape Liquor Board. Well, now at a later stage, some of them, they acknowledge receiving those letters, although some of them, they didn't acknowledge receiving those letters, more especially Eastern Cape Liquor Board, because they say they were never received any complaints from the communities with regard to that. But perhaps in that area, Senari Park, they acknowledge receiving those complaints from the community, but nothing was done with regard to that.
And the health department, I mean, officials wouldn't properly tell you why your son died, why so many people died. The Human Rights Commission says you weren't treated properly. How do you feel about the health department after all of this?
Look, the health department they had quite a lot of things that they have said with regard to the death of the children. And as you know, the preliminary report, it mentioned that it was poisoning, but at a later stage they say no, it was a sort of stampede association. And on our regular meetings, we agreed that each parent will be issued with the report, so that they can see exactly what the report says. But on the day of releasing that report, we couldn't even see the results by ourselves. We were only given the results verbally, as to say, your child died because of this and that. So they hold those things to them, say that it's a confidential information. Confidential to who? Because those are our children. So really the way that they treated us, I don't think it was the right way that you should treat a person who's bereaved. So we're quite not happy about that.
I mean, I'm sure you are, and there'll be an inquest. Do you think that will change things? I think so many people have been quite angry on your behalf about how you've been treated.
Quite right. You're quite right. We hope the inquest will unveil quite a lot of things as to really what happened, because also the post-mortem reports will be part of that. We hope it will really show or tell us exactly what transpired in that place on that fateful night or that fateful morning. I mean, as from that until today, we still don't know, because there has been a lot of things that we were told as to what transpired in that place.
And Mr. Nkandane, has anything changed in your community around taverns and alcohol since this happened? I mean, the Eastern Cape Liquor Board has, I think, 1/3 of the inspectors it's supposed to have. In the last few years, it's still issued over 1,600 new liquor licenses. The Human Rights Commission says there should be a moratorium, a pause on issuing these licenses. Do you think there's still taverns in your community selling alcohol to young people under the age of 18?
There are still quite a lot of them. You know, to have laws in place, but there's no monitoring of those laws, and there are people who are supposed to monitor that, it doesn't help. Because as you are saying now, that Eastern Cape has issued quite a lot of licenses, but they don't have enough inspectors on the ground to see to it that what they are issuing to the tavern owners or to the liquor license holders, it's exactly what they are doing. It's quite relevant with regard to the law. It's still a lot that has to be done with regard to that. Even now in March, around about Easter, children, there were a lot of children who in the beachfront. I mean, there were a lot of alcohol involved in young children in that area. Some of them were raped, some of them were taken by police because they were so drunk they don't even know where they were. So that's still quite a lot of things to be done with regard to licensing. Not only in the Eastern Cape, I think for the whole of South Africa. I mean, if you go in these areas, I mean, a tavern in the shacks and in the temporary structures, there are taverns that are in the temporary structures that were given by the government. I mean, what does that say?
So, thank you very much indeed for your time. I really do appreciate it. Kulekile Nkandane is the father of 18-year-old Bungulwetu who passed away, one of the people who passed away in the Inori Tavern. Still, so many questions. 18 minutes after 7.
My name is Zaki Ahmed, and I am standing as an independent candidate in the 2024 elections. Justice, equality, dignity and freedom has always been a part of my political life. I've helped build working class movements such as the Treatment Action Campaign, the National Coalition for Gay and Lesbian Equality, the Social Justice Coalition in Informal Settlements, and Unite Behind for a Quality Rail System. I will continue this struggle as an independent member of Parliament with your voice and also with any MP of integrity. Vote for me, Zaki Ahmed, on the regional ballot in the Western Cape.
This political election broadcast was brought to you in terms of the CASA regulation governing the election period. The views expressed in this political election broadcast are those of the political party and not of the SABC.
Stay on top of all meaningful, top trending stories right here on SAFM. Leading the conversation.
19 minutes after 7, good morning. Former President Thabo Mbeki told people in Soweto they must vote for the ANC again, despite the problems the party has. He was campaigning for the ANC yesterday in the area around Jabulani Mall. The ANC says it's going to bring in other former leaders ahead of the elections. Samkela Maseko was a senior SABC political reporter with the former president yesterday. He joins us now. Samkela, good morning.
A very good morning to you, Stephen, and to the listeners.
To see former President Mbeki on the campaign trail again, I mean, what was his main message? Did he give people reasons to vote for the ANC?
Essentially, he did give people reasons to vote for the African National Congress. He was distributing the ANC's manifesto for these particular elections on the 6 points that they want to roll out should they be returned to government. And effectively speaking about how the ANC is renewing itself, how the ANC is still the only political organization that can drive the agenda of transformation within South Africa, grow the economy, stimulate it, and also going in and reflecting of how the South African economy could once again be the biggest within the African continent, which is a research that was recently done.
He was asked about the problems in the ANC, and we've seen some of those recently. What's he said about that? I mean, it's, Mbeki's relationship with the leadership of the ANC since he left office has been very interesting.
It's been a very paradoxed relationship that former President Mbeki has with the ANC. It's been a frank relationship. It's been a relationship where he tells them there and there where he's got issues. For instance, to remember the letter he pinned down to the Deputy President of the African National Congress, particularly on how the ANC voted on the independent Section 89 report on Palapala of the President, and essentially how he went on to go and have a meeting with the ANC's top brass at Luthuli House over this particular issue that he had pinned down to the deputy president. He's also been very supportive of the ANC leadership in some of the initiatives that they've raised, and particularly with the veterans of the African National Congress led by Snoki Zikalala, who have worked with Mbeki hand in hand in addressing some of the challenges within the African National Congress. But Stephen, there's one point many people don't know and don't realize. The meeting that took the whole night of the African National Congress to fine-tune their list, which was virtually, whether to remove those who are implicated in state capture or corruption or not. The person who actually brokered the deal in the NEC of the ANC that particular night was Thabo Mbeki, who said the names of the people who are alleged to be corrupt must remain on the list, but they must go through internal processes. And when those internal processes conclude, if David Mahlobo, if Zizi Godba, if Cedric Froelich, if Gwede Mantashe must be removed from the list, then that would be the final decision of the National Disciplinary Committee, and those people must then be removed from the list of the African National Congress. And that then tells you of how involved Mbeki is in the internal workings of the African National Congress, particularly the National Executive Committee, and not just Mbeki, also even Kgalema Motlanthe, the former Deputy President of the African National Congress, and also Baleka Mbete, the former National Chairperson of the ANC and former Deputy President of the country. She is integrally involved in the inner workings of the ANC Women's League, of the ANC itself. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka as well is being courted by the ANC Women's League to start campaigning and going out to the people. Hence, you've seen Mbeki, who will be continuing with the campaign within the African National Congress today when he launches those letters he wrote as the president of the African National Congress this afternoon. He will effectively also be campaigning for the ANC. We do know that he was also fine-tuning his program, that he will be going to the battleground province, KwaZulu-Natal, to also campaign for the ANC and also the Western Cape. So essentially, Mbeki is on full mode campaign for the very first time for the African National Congress since the ANC's 2007 January 8 statement.
I mean, I can't remember if it was 2016 or 2011 when he actually met with Julius Malema and Floyd Chivambu just before an election. So, I mean, it shows you how things have changed. Mbeki was president during, I think, a relatively good time for South Africa. The economy was growing. I think people also remember issues around HIV/AIDS, for example. How effective is Mbeki going to be campaigning for the ANC, especially in KZN where he wasn't always that popular because Zuma was so strong at the time?
The reality, Stephen, of the matter is research has been done. Mbeki remains the most popular and the most trusted politician within the country. Mbeki's popularity dwarfs that of Cyril Ramaphosa, dwarfs that of Julius Malema, dwarfs that of any current politician within the political realms within the country. He is loved by the people. For instance, if yesterday I was having a debate with some of our colleagues who were saying Mbeki is misplaced by going to the people in Soweto, I'm like, you guys need to be historical in your contextualization of politicians within this country. Mbeki was very prominent in his years as president of the African National Congress and president of the country in Soweto. He only became unpopular in the latter years of his presidency when the likes of Dingas Kwebu were protesting in Soweto against Mbeki, and that's when his popularity waned in Soweto. Even himself as Mbeki was surprised at the cheers, the jubilation, people wanting to see him, people wanting to touch him in Soweto, to a point where he said he was so excited to see this particular love from the people of Soweto, and he will be returning to campaign within that specific area of the country and other areas at large, and that he will not only be confined to controlled environments where he speaks to intelligentsia only and business, but he will also go out and speak to the ordinary people within the country, because he is also saying that he has not effectively campaigned like he used to when he was president of the African National Congress. I'd remember one image of him when I was a kid, when he went to an era where I grew up from in Ndwedwe, where he was alongside Sihlezi Galala. I was still a toddler. When I see those visuals, you can see the interaction that he has with the people. And he was reminded of those particular interactions when he effectively campaigned for the very first time yesterday, because in 2019 he was just seated alongside Lebogang Maile, seated alongside the then chairperson of the ANC in Gauteng, David Makura, at the Nasrec Expo Center, speaking to intelligentsia and persuading them to vote for the African National Congress. He did not effectively just don an ANC t-shirt alone, go hand out pamphlets of the African National Congress and t-shirts of the African National Congress like he did yesterday, which was a very first campaign for Mbeki in that nature ever since he left public office. And that tells you of how involved he is now again within the structures of the African National Congress. And him going to KwaZulu-Natal, we must once again demystify that particular myth that he's infamous within that province. You'd remember back in 2021 when Mdumiseni Ntuli was the provincial secretary of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal. He was invited to speak to intelligentsia within the province of KwaZulu-Natal. He was loved, he was sang for, they cheered for him. You'd remember again the memorial lecture they had on Robert Gabriel Mugabe at the Durban City Hall. He was cheered, he was loved again. You go to the Eastern Cape with Oscar Mabuyan and Lula Mangzugai Toby as the provincial secretary of that particular province. He was invited, he was loved, he was cheered. And that tells you of the love Mbeki is getting from ANC structures. You go to the Free State. He's been to the Free State about 6 or 7 times to engage with the PTT and ultimately engage with the PEC now of Mxolisi Tukwana.
Samkele Maseko, thank you very much indeed. The SABC senior political reporter with the former president yesterday.
Join us on Afternoon Express Tuesday at 6 p.m. on S3 as we celebrate Workers' Day. Tatu Mambalani shares how to assert yourself at work without being arrogant, and Amy Kleinhans lets us in on how to beat a bad day at the office. And we're making peanut butter balls for that 3 p.m. brain fog. That's Afternoon Express Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Repeat Sundays at 8:30 a.m. only on S3.
Lindelani ladies are on a massive search for 3 points, but TS Galaxy ladies say they will travel back from eThekwini with a song of jubilance. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Witness the queens of the beautiful game, Lindelani Ladies FC versus TS Galaxy Ladies FC on Sunday 28 April at 11 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. A lot for Sundowns to do, eh?
Yeah, they are revved up for a home ground comeback, hoping to turn that deficit. And their coach, Rulani Mokwena, remains confident. This is the upcoming CAF Champions League semi-final second leg. Mamelodi Sundowns will face Esperance, and they must secure a 2-goal victory or at least replicate their opponent's 1-0 to bring the match to penalties. Here's Rulani Mokwena.
We understand that it's only half-time, but a half-time that we go into with a disadvantage, but that is exactly what it is. It's a disadvantage and nothing more than that. And with commitment, with enthusiasm, with positivity, we know that we can overturn the result. And the good thing about the second leg is that it takes place in front of our people.
Meanwhile, DR Congo's TP Mazembe believes they can cause a shock by defeating the defending champions Al Ahly in their second leg of the CAF Champions League quarterfinal taking place in Cairo tonight. Meanwhile, former Manchester United defender Rio Ferdinand says Erik ten Hag's future with the club depends on how the season finishes. Ferdinand suggests winning the FA Cup, which they are in, and it says this could be the second trophy for ten Hag since he joined the club in 2022.
I think the biggest bit of work has probably been done, which is clearing the decks behind the scenes and getting new people in, freshening up the place behind the scenes with good people, experienced people. And the important part as well is doing that appraisal, looking at things, what's working, what isn't, learning from the mistakes of the previous regime, and then going out and executing.
And finally, tennis. Coco Gauff sprinted into her third round of the WTA Madrid Open with a 6-love demolition of Arantxa Rus of the Netherlands. More sport, top of the hour on Sunrise. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. We'll speak to the Reserve Bank in a little while about deposit insurance. That's coming up. You're with SFM leading the conversation 7:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, the state is expected to hand in more bank records of one of the accused in the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial when it resumes in the High Court in Pretoria this morning. Former President Jacob Zuma and the Umkhonto weSizwe Party have 5 days in which to submit answering papers to the Constitutional Court to oppose the Electoral Commission's application. The Commission is seeking to appeal the Electoral Court's ruling in favour of the MK Party's inclusion of Zuma on its candidates list for next month's elections. And member of the ANC's National Executive Committee, Inori Tavern, says he's confident the governing party will win 50% of votes in next month's election. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Started off reasonably okay, but it's got a lot heavier this Friday as we've moved through the day. Joburg, crash on the N3 north at Heldenay, so delays coming out of Alberton and Germiston this morning. So big queues up there, passing Cement Factory on your way into Heldenay. So if you're on the WhatsApp group, seeing a crash at Cleveland on the M2, that was yesterday's drama, so no problems at Cleveland. You can ignore that one. The N1 heading north into William Mandela, quite a heavy backlog. Queues from Bayers Nordia up through Malabongwe and up towards that William Mandela off-ramp. A crash on the N1 north at Buccleuch interchange. That's badly affecting the ramps coming off the N3 and the N1. So the N3 from Alex, the N1 from Sunninghill, Ravonia roadside. Both of those highways quite heavily backed up into those ramps to get onto the N1 and for a turn towards the Midrand area. Issues around Pretoria with this broken down vehicle M1 south at Rigel. That's heavy from the N4 Emelafeni highway. It's a really heavy backlog coming out of Pretoria today. Also leaving Pietermaritzburg, a breakdown. The last of them, this has been about 3 this morning. The last one awaiting clearances at Umlas Road, so just after Ashburton. It gets heavy. M7 into Pinetown. The reason for that big backlog this morning is a couple of stationary trucks at the N3, so it's a real heavy queue from North Dean, North Park. That's on the M7, but there's terrific pressure off the highway there, going out of Queensborough Main Road onto Stapleton, all the way to those faulty traffic lights at Eden, up into Pinetown. So the M7's heavy, and the alternative local route probably this morning even worse. M4 Southern Freeway into central Durban, that's a problem up towards the embankment area. And if you're driving Cape Town, the N1 into town, very slow, approaching a motorcycle collision before Monte Vista. Traffic parking back towards Paddlecliff Hill. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Intaulengla Chela, good morning again. Asian, how are the markets looking this morning?
So Asia stocks on track to end the week off on a positive note, with most indexes trading in the green. Now, this despite worries about the economic outlook and inflation in the US. Investors on that end are digesting the Bank of Japan's decision to keep rates unchanged. Although this was an expected move, it has weighed on the Japanese yen, driving that currency to an over 3-decade low. Tokyo's Nikkei, however, up 1%, and China's Shanghai index gaining 0.9%. US futures, in the meantime, have also turned positive on the back of stellar numbers from Alphabet and Microsoft. Traders are also eyeing the PCI inflation print from the US today. Back at home, the JSE taking a breather after 3 days of gains, with the all share losing 0.25% in yesterday's trade.
And then BHP making this big buyout proposal for Anglo Americans. A big deal, eh?
It is. Now, yesterday we talked about copper and how it's in demand, and we're seeing that playing out with the bigger players now vying for those assets. We had BHP make a near $40 billion takeover bid for its rival Anglo American. The Australian mining giant is eyeing Anglo's copper assets in particular and plans to disinvest in its platinum and diamonds as well as iron ore operations. So if the deal goes through, Anglo would have to spin off Amplats and Kumba. Now, according to analysts, the deal has the potential to transform the mining industry landscape, and the news has taken the industry players by surprise, with the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy slamming the buyout proposal. In a Bloomberg article, Minister Mantashe had been quoted saying he doesn't support the deal and doesn't think Anglo will agree to do the buyout proposal. Investors, however, were quite excited about the potential deal, with Anglo soaring close to 19% in yesterday's trade.
And then the Reserve Bank launching this bank deposit insurance scheme. We'll hear from them in a few moments. It's a very important deal.
It seems like South Africans can rest assured that their deposited monies will be safe, even if there are bank failures. Now, this comes as the SARBs launched the country's first deposit insurance body, which is referred to as the Corporation for Deposit Insurance. Now, the body's mandate is to protect depositors with savings at the country's banks. So if a local bank collapses or even if it's liquidated, that committee will step in. The fund, however, will only cover deposits of up to 100,000 Rand. The rule applies to commercial and mutual banks, and the move has been welcomed by the financial industry, with some saying that it makes South Africa's financial system safer.
Ntalengla Chelap, thanks very much indeed. Have a good weekend. We'll chat again on Monday, 24 minutes now to 8.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
All right, calls coming through this morning. That's the number. Don't forget your story of the week from 8:30. Mbalentle from Denelton. Mbalentle, hi, good morning. Former President Mbeki.
Yes, good morning, Stephen, and good morning to our producers as well. You see, Stephen, I think what Comrade Mbeki is doing, it's what any member of the ANC and a real South African citizen will do. Because we are facing a possibility of total collapse of our own country, our own democracy that our comrades fought for it for a very long time. Others sacrificed even their lives. Because you can't imagine, Stephen, having Zuma as a president, Julius Malema, deputy president, the country is collapsed. 1 week, the country is finished. Now I'm saying, former president of the ANC, Kgalema, and the deputy president, Baleka, Pumzile, and the others, they must come together. But this should not happen only at the national scale. It must also happen in the provinces where we are calling our former provincial chairperson, Castle Matale, Selolo Moloto, Wakora Mahlodi, all of them, they must join this in making sure that we oil our election machinery, we strengthen it to make sure that we defend this democracy, not only for ourselves, but the people of this country. Even down at the district level, Skukune, Julia Matebe, Stanley Ramaila, Shoes, and Dixon Masemola, who were the former regional chairperson of the ANC in Skukune, and the executive mayor. They must all join. All of us, we must join Stephen and join us to make sure that we defend this democracy. And it should not happen only now because there is campaign season.
Sure.
We must make sure that Thabo Mbeki and his comrades, who still enjoy the support and integrity of our people, to have an influence in the ANC. Ramaphosa must allow Mbeki to say anything in the NEC and National Working Committee in government. We can even deploy some of the stalwarts right in the government just to make sure that our policies are implemented and we leave no chance to any corrupt.
All right, Mbalentle, I think we get the message. So basically, it's a good thing.
It's a good thing. We appreciate this South Africans. Yeah. All of us, we are now joining. Some of us were dragging our feet. Now that Mbeki is there, we are joining because we believe the message that we are going to give South Africans is exactly what's going to happen after elections. Not to indicate right and tell left. This time it's going to be real service delivery and corruption is going to be fought. I can assure you.
All right, Mbalentle,
let's go out and vote for the ANC.
All right, Mbalentle, thank you. We can see what he's going to do on the 29th of May on the line from Denelton. Tebogo in Rustenburg. Are you as enthusiastic about the former president, Tebogo?
Grootes, how's it, bro?
I'm well, Tebogo. Go for it.
Good morning to you and your team there. Look, even if these guys, they can resurrect all the ancestors of African nations, Congress, I'm not convinced about what these guys are doing.
Wow.
In fact, as a person who grew up in Bophuthatswana, former president, the past Bangope, used to agree with what Mbeki is saying, that these guys will lead us to a disaster. Like Mbeki is saying essentially in the strategic dialogue group which was held in 2002, I don't think you still remember that. He said ANC is led by criminals. So now it's election. He's coming out to say, must we now vote for criminals? Come on, Stephen.
All right. No, Tebogo, I hear you. It's interesting. I mean, I did think, that there's strong views around former President Mbeki, and I think I understand why as well to an extent. But it's very interesting. It's interesting as well that the ANC is sort of deploying people from that era. And actually, I think any political party in the position that the ANC is in will do exactly the same thing. 20 minutes to 8.
Keeping up with your TV license balance inquiries is now simpler than ever. No more waiting in queues, no more phone calls. Just SMS your ID or TV license account number to 44210 and secure your legal viewing fast and simple. Standard SMS rates will be charged. Terms and conditions apply. TV licenses. Pay yours. Make a difference.
Ladies are on a massive search for 3 points, but TS Galaxy ladies say they will travel back from eThekwini with a song of jubilance. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Witness the queens of the beautiful game, Lindelani Ladies FC versus TS Galaxy Ladies FC on Sunday 28 April at 11 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag we love it here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
19 minutes to 8 the time. You know the number 086 Well, the SA Reserve Bank has now launched the Corporation for Deposit Insurance, which will provide insurance for anyone who puts money into a bank that then fails. In other words, if you use a bank for your bank account and that bank collapses, your money will be guaranteed up to a limit of 100,000 Rand. It'll be automatic, by the way. You don't have to do anything to qualify for the insurance. Rashad Kasim is a Deputy Governor of the South African Reserve Bank. Deputy Governor, good morning and thank you for your time this morning.
Morning, Stephen.
How's this actually going to work?
So it's very simple, Stephen. Basically, what happens is that everyone who has a deposit today is now technically in a registered bank, is technically qualifies for the 100,000 threshold deposit, and consumers don't have to do anything. It is all designed by the central bank in collaboration with the National Treasury. All this has taken a long while to do. We've set up the infrastructure and so on. So technically, there's this entity called CODI, which is a subsidiary at the South African Reserve Bank, which basically will manage the deposit insurance.
So how's it funded? I mean, where does the money come from to fund the insurance?
So it is partly, and this is nothing unique to South Africa. It is partly a premium that the banks have to contribute to deposit insurance. So that's one of the major funding.
Okay, so the banks pay in basically, like I pay in for fire insurance.
Yeah. Something like that.
Okay, if there are no bank failures for, say, 10 years, right, say for a long time, the amount of money that will have been put into the fund will be quite big, right? That money would grow over time, I presume.
Exactly.
Okay, so then what happens if there's a failure the day after the fund starts? So say it starts today, on Monday a bank collapses, there wouldn't be any money in the fund. So what happens then?
Yeah, there is an interim, and the interim is where all sorts of arrangements are done, where the SARB acts as a guarantee for some of the funds, and then that leads to a process where SARB can recover the funds to fund at a later stage. So, the details are all on our website, but essentially, interim measures have been put in place to ensure that if there's a failure today, where the funds are just beginning to fill up, relative to 10 years time when the funds have accumulated quite a bit. From the perspective of the consumer should not worry that that funds are available.
Okay, and it's up to 100,000 Rand because it's deposit insurance. It's not for other things. It's just for deposits.
Yeah. So what we've done is that, as you've rightly pointed out, Stephen, that this is costly. There's a cost to having a insurance fund. The benefit of the stability of the financial system and the protection for consumers far outseed that cost. But I think that you have to target it at some level, and we discovered through our statistical work that at least 9 out of 10 deposits are in the area of 100,000 rand. So if someone has 120,000 rand in a bank account, they will initially be covered for 100,000. The 20,000 will then probably recovered through a resolution process once the bank is wound up or restructured. But that's how it will more or less work.
Why have you decided to do this now? Why go this route now?
So it's the context, Stephen, is that we, like many global central banks, in the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis, began to reevaluate the way we regulate the financial sector. Now, as you would know, that South Africa was one of the few countries that didn't have a financial crisis. It had a very solid banking sector. But what we began to do, and we're part of an international standard-setting bodies, we're part of the Basel Committee in which sets standards for banks. So many central banks began from the 2008 onwards to design a variety of laws to protect and increase the resilience of the financial sector. So we were part of that process. Some did have deposit insurance before 2008, but it takes a while to set this up, to design it, to get the law passed. So what you're seeing is the culmination, of several years of work. So really, the timing stems from the aftermath of the global financial crisis.
Okay, could there be other consequences? I mean, maybe beneficial consequences to this. So, for example, I'm one of those people who's been with the same bank since my father took me to go and open a bank account in the same bank branch that his father, you know the story. And what happens, I think, is that, people don't try new banks. I know some people do. And they don't try new banks, and there have been several new banks recently, because they don't know whether to trust them. So what this might mean now is people may feel more secure, and they might say, well, I'm going to try this new bank because I get more interest, or I like this product, or whatever. Could there be other consequences, some of which may be very good consequences for the banking system as a result of doing this because of the greater certainty?
Yeah, so the governor in his speech yesterday afternoon in the launch of CODI made a few observations exactly on the question you're asking. And one of it is that, you have been at an established bank, and a new bank emerges that offers a more competitive deposit rate than your existing bank. You generally would have been a bit reluctant. You want to put 50,000 in that bank, but you're worried, how sustainable is this bank? But now suddenly you know that you're covered by a deposit insurance, which means that it exactly does that. There's a pro-competitive effect. The competition will be enhanced. Although the design of the deposit insurance is to social protection and stability of the financial sector, a byproduct of this is it can actually lead to more competition, particularly for more smaller emerging banks.
I mean, it's like if you go to a new area and people aren't sure it's safe. If the government says we'll pay some of your insurance, people will go and build in that area because they feel more safe. It's the same sort of thing.
Yep.
Okay. The way things that are set up with the regulation of banks and with the way that you regulate banks as the Reserve Bank, I mean, no bank should ever really collapse, and yet we know, from time to time this will happen. And the VBS, which of course everyone talks about, that bank collapsed, I think for two reasons, because the people running the bank were stealing the money. And then the auditors, and this was crucial, the auditors were lying about it. So when people lie to you and the auditors lie to you, it's very difficult to know what's actually going on. It's almost sort of unprecedented. Do you think a VBS-style collapse, so a bank collapsing in that way, could it still happen again? Or do you think you've managed to make it sort of impossible for something like that to happen in the same way?
So Stephen, let me first make the point that CODI, under no circumstances, should create what in technical terms we all call the moral hazard problem. It does not mean that the SARB and the banks can now relax to say, you know what, if a VBS situation happens, depositors are covered. What we've done, and a lesson that many regulators take out of failed banks is, where did we go wrong? So if the auditors, for example, may have misled us, what is wrong with the auditing profession? So extra caution is taken from that. So in a country, the most important lesson from a regulator is to reflect on where you went wrong. What were the pitfalls of your own regulation? Were you sleeping at the wheel? Were the laws not fit for purpose? So, you can never guarantee, but I think that what we've done is we've tightened up legal regulation. We've tightened up the way we look at the books of banks. So there's been massive improvements. We've consulted very widely with the auditing profession. So we've tightened the screws, but it's the nature of the game. There are often banks, particularly smaller banks, that could go under, but not for the kind of VBS reasons you've talked about, for other reasons, the way the investment was managed and a number of things.
So thank you very much indeed. Rashad Kasim is a Deputy Governor at the South African Reserve Bank. 9 minutes to 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, starting Joburg, if you're heading south from Sandton down towards Braamfontein territory, crash near the Houghton Drive exit, and that's causing a delay right back through to Caller Drive. So from Melrose, it's all badly backed up. N3 North, N1 North into Buccleuch, both of those routes heavy after an earlier crash where those routes merge through Buccleuch and drop you onto the N1 towards the Allendale Road. That crash in the Buccleuch interchange, though. And the collision scene on the N3 North at Heldenace, which backed everything up this morning, is being cleared, but there's now a breakdown on the N3 South at Heldenace near Van Buren, so some delays coming through Galulis. Pretoria's N1, possibly the heaviest delay around Gauteng this morning. It's a breakdown in big volumes at Rigel Avenue. It's pushing traffic all the way back through to the N4 Emalahleni Highway. Collision on the Mompati Highway involving a taxi approaching the N4, so sort of just after Block XX. There is some queuing pressure into that scene as well. Durban's M7 into Pinetown remains dreadful. 2 stationary trucks near the N3, 1 lane open, backlogs to North Dean, North Park, and the alternative, the main road, Stapleton Road option, if you like, is probably even worse from Queensborough, Malvern through to Pinetown. Very heavy on the highway and on the side roads as well. M4 Southern Freeway jammed. I think there might be some roadworks going on there. Roadworks at Congella just causing some delays up towards the central Durban area this morning. And Cape Town, earlier crash on the M1 inbound before Monte Vista. All lanes are open. Bit sluggish coming through from Plattercliff into that one. And if you're driving in or out through Somerset West, there's no traffic lights in the Gans Park area. It's the junction of Fabrique Street. Quite heavy. Outbound from Broadway Boulevard, coming inbound from the Gordons Bay side. There's queuing pressure on that section of the N2 as well. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Nalibitso la ka ke bonolo moagi di bantse mbarek Miss B morara Miss T moagi di the Bonnie B Bonbon, and we'll be now playing Kena on Mondays at 4:30. The day has changed, but the time slot hasn't. So if you're interested in news that's happening with us kids and our peers around the world, don't forget to tune in. See you there.
The University Registrar and Secretary to Convocation, Dr. Joel Baloy, cordially invites all members of the University of Venda Convocation to attend the AGM on Saturday, 11 May 2024 in Polokwane, Merupa Hotel at 10:30. The AGM will consider the Vice-Chancellor's State of Campus Report, the President of Convocation Report, and amendments to the Constitution of the Convocation. To RSVP and confirm attendance, please visit www.univen.ac.za/announcements or contact Mr. Mashuda Ramarebo on 060-906-1902.
RSP Pekane have a great gift for their home fans. They want to book a spot in the final, but USM Alger says not under their watch. Who will be honored as the champs of the North African Derby? This is the second leg of the Total Energies CAF Confederation Cup semi-final. RSP Pekane battles it out with USM Alger, live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, this Sunday, 28 April at 9 p.m. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
SAFM 104 to 107. Nationwide.
6 minutes now to 8 the time. Good morning. Well, more warnings around what are described as fake e-hailing operators, people who appear to be working for an Uber or a Bolt or someone like that, when in fact they aren't. And this has been a big issue, particularly in the Western Cape. Police have been talking about certain crimes a year, often around shopping malls. Siyabonga Khalabisa is the chair of the Western Cape E-Hailing Association. Siyabonga, good morning.
Good morning to the listeners.
What kind of problems are you seeing? What do people need to be aware of to make sure they don't fall prey to these fake e-hailing operators?
I think the very important thing that we've been addressing is the issue of the clients being more vigilant, especially also on checking the profile of the drivers, confirming the name and the vehicle and the registration number of the vehicle. Some clients are getting now very comfortable not to check such things, and that's why we see the source of crime came from. And also the issue of the fake profile that have been created by certain people also to use in a very negative way, especially to try and commit suicide using e-hailing platforms. And also in the airport areas, we do have such issues. People who comes and call themselves certain apps, tell the clients that they use the phone, they are charging the same price as Uber and Bolt, whatever. The client, they jump there because of maybe of thinking that it's a faster or cheaper price. And when the crime happens, you want to find out we can't even be able to trace the driver because the driver was not registered with any of the apps.
I mean, the big thing, if you use an app to call it a car, you need to check the license plate. And then I've often found, as you get to the car, ask the driver their name and make sure that it matches, what it is that you actually have on your app. I mean, that should be enough, shouldn't it?
No, that will be enough. That will be enough. But we have few cases whereby a driver gets robbed, and the criminals then, while the driver has been robbed, obviously the trips are still coming on driver's phone. And some of them, they put the driver in the boot, and then they drive with the driver to get a client who's waiting for that particular service. So those things are happening, but it's not like many of them. But we have cases like that when the driver comes and say, "No, I was already robbed and I was in the boot." So then the criminals use that opportunity. But also it's a issue. At night it might be a case, but during the day also it's very important to look at the face of the driver to confirm with the face that you have in your phone. And also I don't think the client, they should mind to ask the driver to open the boot if they feel uncomfortable of what might be inside the boot in the vehicle, because these things are something that you can't even confirm, or maybe I think even law enforcement, they are struggling with it, because it's something that happens between two parties during, any time.
Yeah, sure. I'd never thought of that. Siyabonga Khalabisa, thank you. Chair of the Western Cape E-Hailing Association. Quite scary, actually. Just be careful when you use the apps. I mean, I use them from time to time. Just be careful would be my advice. 086 000 2032.
At SFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes on Twitter.
Stephen's on the line from Polokwane. Stephen, hi. You heard that conversation with the Reserve Bank?
Yes, and it got me thinking, Stephen, that what about the money invested in private companies or mutual discoveries, the momentum? What happens if those companies get liquidated? Is there any guarantees to our money?
Not in the same way, no. And I think the Reserve Bank wouldn't have authority over that because they aren't banks, if you see what I mean. So it's that would be the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, and I think there's another body as well that would be in charge of that. But I don't think there's insurance for that as far as I know, Stephen.
Does it?
Yeah.
That's a bit scary. That means we might consider moving our money back to the banks.
I suppose.
Offering a lower rate.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'm no expert on all of this, and I can't give you advice, and I don't have any qualification to give you advice.
Yeah, maybe somebody will chip in and then.
Yeah, what I would suggest though is you've got to go by reputation, and I mean you can see what people have done in the past. You can see how long people have been around. Although you see scandals at Tongaat Hewlett, which is like 100 years old. So things do happen. But Stephen, I think you take advice from a professional on this matter. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Stephen on the line from Polokwane. It's an interesting question, isn't it? What is going to happen there? Well, in a few moments, we expect that Nkululeko Dunga, the Gauteng chair of the Economic Freedom Fighters, will be with you. As you know, we're trying to speak to various political parties ahead of the election, face-to-face in our studio. So looking forward to that. Today, the turn of the EFF. We did the DA last week. We'll see if we can do the ANC next week and probably the IFP after that. And then, of course, it will be time to vote. So we'll be looking at that. We'll take your calls as well, your story of the week on 086 000 2032. Good morning. You're with SFM leading the conversation. It's 8 o'clock.
In our top stories, state to submit additional bank records in Meyiwa murder trial, and Constitutional Court extends deadline for respondents in Zuma candidacy appeal. Good morning. The state is expected to hand in more bank records of one of the accused in the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial when it resumes in the High Court in Pretoria this morning. 5 men are on trial for gunning down the Bafana captain in October 2014. The accused, Muzisi Biya, previously told the court he had left Gauteng in 2013 and only returned in 2015. He said he therefore could not have been involved in the killing of Meyiwa. But Ronnie Sibanda, who is part of the prosecution team, said there were a number of transactions from Sibiya's bank account between October 2014, the month in which Meyiwa was murdered, and December the same year.
The purpose of this evidence, in short, is to challenge the alibi of accused number one during the time of the commission of the offence, and secondly also to show the telephone numbers that the accused persons provided when they opened this particular bank account.
In election news, the former President Jacob Zuma and the Umkhonto weSizwe party have 5 days in which to submit answering papers to the Constitutional Court to oppose the Electoral Commission's application. The Commission is seeking to appeal the Electoral Court's ruling in favour of the MK party's inclusion of Zuma on its candidates list for next month's elections. The Constitutional Court has also ordered the Commission to submit answering papers. The legal representatives of Zuma and the MK party initially said 24 hours was not enough for their clients to make their submissions. The court then extended the deadline from yesterday to Tuesday next week. The Commission had disqualified Zuma because the Apex Court had found him in contempt of court. Member of the ANC's National Executive Committee, Inori says he's confident the governing party will win 50% of votes in next month's election. Some analysts have predicted that the ANC is likely to get around 40%, but Godongwana says the ANC is not expecting to have to form a coalition government after the elections.
I'm on the ANC list as we speak. If the ANC and I sit in a comfortable position because we believe we're going to get more than 51%, so I'm going to go back to Parliament. I'm saying we're going to get more than 50%. That's where we're working, and I think the numbers suggest in that direction.
Political analyst Sandile Swana says he believes the chances of the DA Solly Msimanga becoming Gauteng's premier after next month's elections are slim. Msimanga is the DA's Gauteng premier candidate. Swana says an ANC-EFF coalition is likely to govern Gauteng.
For now, that is a remote possibility, given that, if you remember, in the last election that they had, I think they had about 27% of the vote, and the EFF had 14%, so I had half of what the DA had. But the DA basically had half of what the ANC had. The ANC had about 50%. Given that Panyaza Lesufi is able to work closer with the EFF, perhaps even with the IFP and other parties in the province, it is likely that the ANC-EFF coalition will take the province more than Msimanga.
Further afield, and finally, the U.S. military has started building a floating pier off the coast of Gaza. It will be used to boost humanitarian aid deliveries or transfer supplies from ships to smaller vessels. A temporary causeway is also planned. Patrick Ryder is the Pentagon spokesperson.
What we're talking about here is the marshalling yard, where eventually, in the vicinity of where this causeway will connect to, but the two essential pieces in the middle are the temporary pier, which is out at sea, and then the causeway, which eventually will join land and be anchored, so to speak.
Recapping the top story, the state is expected to hand in more bank records of one of the accused in the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial when it resumes in the High Court in Pretoria this morning. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you in your SFM Sports headlines. It's soccer action. Mamelodi Sundowns set the stage for a thrilling CAF Champions League semi-final showdown with Esperance tonight. And the Springbok women, they're charging up for the Rugby Sevens in Singapore. We'll bring you the details just before 8:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very heavy leading Pretoria this morning. This will probably surprise you for a Friday how heavy it is. It's just a stationary vehicle at Rigel Avenue, but it's pushing traffic all the way back to the N4 Emily Valley Highway split. Mopani Highway, an earlier crash at the N4 Highway. That's all being cleared up. Collision on the Mike 1 South that we reported at Houghton Drive a little bit earlier. Traffic is now moving. One of the other delays in Joburg is a breakdown on the N3 South at Van Buren. So quite a heavy backlog beyond Galilees and back up into the Edenvale area. Durban having a very busy run, particularly if you're Pinetown bound out of Queensborough, Malvern, North End, North Park's really tight this morning. You've got a couple of stationary trucks on the M7 at the N3, so that's heavy with a big queue back, a really big queue, just sort of after the Belleville Road exits where you'll pick that up. And then the side road, the main road that works up and becomes Stapleton Road up in towards Pinetown, super heavy backlog. So the highway and the alternative routes very slow. N2 still jabbing from the M7 up into the roadworks at Spaghetti Junction. Cape Town, no traffic lights at Somerset West, and with some Friday morning volumes, that's all heavy. The lights that are down at Fabrique Street, Gans Park area, traffic queuing both ways, but particularly heavy on the N2 outbound, which queues back to Broadway Boulevard. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
Good morning, you with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes, 6 minutes after 8 the time. Expecting to hear from the EFF in just a few moments about, of course, their plans for the election campaign. You know the number, 086 000 2032. Your story of the week from 8:30, and there's a lot going on, of course. Former President Thabo Mbeki on the campaign trail yesterday. That's one of the issues. The Reserve Bank also in the news with that new deposit insurance system. You don't have to do anything, but it is, of course, very important to what is happening in terms of how banking deposits are managed. All of that to come. You know the number at 7 after 8. Good morning.
The highly anticipated Metro FM Music Awards are finally here, in the live concert happening with a star-studded lineup of DJs and live performances.
Make some beautiful noise!
On the lineup, Oscar Mbo, Oskido, Dala Tuxin, Makadzi, Lamise Hallworthy, Mtunzi, Luandlunkulu, Umshaka, Amos, They Could DJ, and a special live performance by the internationally acclaimed Hoabili.
You can now secure your tickets from 300 Rand at computicket.co.za. Don't miss your chance to be part of this unforgettable celebration. 27th April at Mbombela Stadium, Mpumalanga. #MMA24. Black to the future. Metro FM. It's where you want to be.
After a 0-0 draw in Cairo, action continues in Kumasi between Dreams FC and Zamalek SC. The Ghanaian outfit want to show their visitors why they are known as Still Believe. They believe they will triumph, but the Royal Club insists they will graduate to the final. This is the second leg of the Total Energies CAF Confederation Cup semi-final. Catch Dreams FC versus Zamalek Sporting Club live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 this Sunday, 28 April at 6 p.m. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. #We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
8 after 8, good morning. Matthew, you're in Mthatha this morning. The Enyobeni tragedy. How do you feel about it, Matthew, after that Human Rights Commission report?
Yes, good morning, Steve. How are you?
I'm well. Go for it.
All right, Steve, I must commend you how best you have carried this story as a person and the extent to which this story have chopped some successes on the airwaves. But still, my worry and my concern is that I don't want to be that devil's advocate, but where is the part about the responsibility of a parent? If Grootes, I'm not sure that you will be asleep at around midnight when you don't know your daughter of 13 years where she is. We are blaming the government on every aspect of the way. Is it the duty of a government to come to your house and police how you take? In as much as the death was avoidable and it's unfortunate, let us also talk about the part of parenting. Who leaves their daughter to go away with God? That was not the first time. If that hasn't happened, we won't be talking about this story. Children carry on like this. As we speak, it's going to happen this year. They will still go back and do the same thing. If nothing happens, nobody talks about it. But once there's a tragedy, then the parents will wake up as if they are this holier than thou parents, and that the tavern owners came knock at their doors and took their children while they were asleep with their children. Some didn't know where their children were in days leading to the situation. But suddenly, everything is on the government. So I want to ask, where is the part of the parent? None of the reports speaks about the responsibility of the parent taking part in it.
It's a very interesting question, Matthew. And I mean, I think a conversation in a way that maybe we've sort of shied away from because we know the parents are dealing with the grief and the sort of tragedy of it all.
No, I understand, but Steve, it's also a wake-up call that we should also accept some form of responsibility. Everything can't be in the government. My daughter won't be out when I'm asleep at midnight. I will never do that.
Yeah. No, I mean, especially at 13. No, Matthew, I hear you. Yeah. It also, Matthew, thank you. No, I can hear that you're quite frustrated about this, and I can understand why on the line from Mthatha. And I think there's a sort of bigger conversation as well around sort of community responsibility. Although I must say, in this case, the community went to the right people and said, this tavern is causing problems, and no one did anything. So I hear you. But Matthew, I think it is an important point. Indolende on the line from Denelton. Hi. Mbeki.
Yes, you see, good morning, SD, and good morning to our listeners as well.
Go for it.
You see, I think what should happen now is just to make sure that now that Mbeki is fully involved in the election campaigns of the ANC, and I know those who have been appreciating Mbeki, like Julia, for dropping his own organization, they will start insulting him. But we must also give him opportunity as a radio station, like we did with other competitors, to explain to you. You will understand, even yourself, Stephen, you will not fold your arms and watch the country taking the direction that it's about to take. The territory that was never charted before, era of coalition, fighting, collapsing, and so on. And explain to South Africans why, so that they can understand, because we already in the ANC understand why he joined the campaign. Two, I was listening to the program of KC on Wednesday where he was hosting the former public protector. Really, that program was very progressive because many of us who didn't understand what the EFF stands for were able to understand that moment that this is a part that cannot be trusted. This is a part that you cannot rely on. Because the lady was able, the public protector was able to accept that, firstly, President Zuma is a delinquent, but they're prepared to work with him. Secondly, he was called a spy. Remember, the EFF was calling public protector a spy, a sellout.
Yes,
Yeah, they were referring to Muslim Kawan.
Yes.
Muslim Kawan is now with the party just because it's convenient for them to use it. But we are saying continue to give them opportunity so that this individual can expose so that they can know what. I appreciate the show that we had on Wednesday. Okay. We know what the EFF stands for. Give other comrades a similar chance so that we must be able to make our mark. EFF is not the party to be trusted. EFF is not the party to be voted for.
All right, Indolende, thank you. On the line from Denelton. Strong political opinions we've had today, as you would expect, during an election. 086 000 2032. Raymond on the line from Gqeberha. Hi, good morning. The Reserve Bank, we had that conversation around deposit insurance this morning, and it takes us to conversations around banks and how they're managed and how we stop them from failing.
Yes, thank you very much, Steve. Steve, firstly, South Africa is a free market economy. Therefore, there's no free lunch. in an economy like we have in the country. Banks, if you were to qualify the additional deposit to secure the 100,000, will go to billions of rands in 10 years. The banks are not willing to put up that money for free. That's one. And if the Reserve Bank says 9 out of 10 people have a deposit of 100 or more than 100,000, and you go on the other side and look into the performance of our economy, we would not be asking for two-pot system in our provident fund.
Sure.
You see, our economy suggests that there's no such money that goes into that is deposited in the bank. But where this thing is, the issue here, Steve, are the banks securing their own positions. Remember, these deposits are said not savings. This is said to be deposits. These are salaries that goes into the banks.
Yeah.
If anything happens with those salaries, it's the financial system in the market that will be disturbed by money that will not be distributed or accounts that will not be paid through the facilitation of that bank which failed. They don't want the financial market to be affected.
Okay.
We will pay.
Yeah. No, I understand. But I mean, everyone involved doesn't want the financial market affected. So I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's one of those situations where everyone's working together to stop that from happening.
No, it's fine, but they must be honest with us. We are going to pay for that money. We are going to pay for it. And secondly, they are not securing us, the depositor.
Sure.
They are securing themselves, the banks, but they are going to take this money out of us.
Okay. Raymond, did you speak to us yesterday?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Raymond, you and I have had this conversation before. You got to pick one name and stick to it, eh? Because you weren't Raymond yesterday. You were someone else yesterday. And I mean, I'm Stephen every morning, Raymond. Can I please ask for the same respect?
No, Steve, I'm anonymous, but your director or at the back there decides to give me the name.
Okay. Then pick a name. Whatever. There's a person who calls in and I mean, people give themselves names, right?
No, let's not lose the essence of the call, Steve. Let's not go to the names. The banks are not securing us. The banks are securing themselves, assisted by the Reserve Bank.
Anonymous.
This is a free market system. They are going to take that money from their clients.
Okay. Anonymous, I'm going to ask you to pick one name. Think about it over the weekend. Call yourself Stephen if you want, and you and I will know that it's you. But pick a name and stick to it. I don't mind that. I mean, I'm not a big fan of it, I must just say. I think there are problems with it. But please pick one name and stick to it so we know it's you, is my point. Okay, thank you. Raymond on the line from Gqeberha. I don't know why I have to offer advice to the Eastern Cape this week. 17 after 8.
The Freedom Front Plus is a political party that has a plan to rebuild South Africa and provide equal opportunities to all. The party's policies provide real solutions to the problems facing the majority of South Africans. We do not only need a new or better government, we need a new dispensation where the power is restored to the people, where communities can make their own decisions about what is important to them, where the economy grows and everyone is afforded the opportunity to prosper. To realize this new dispensation, vote for the Freedom Front Plus.
Let's rebuild South Africa. Vote Freedom Front Plus on the 29th of May.
This political election broadcast was brought to you in terms of the CASA regulation governing the election period. The views expressed in this political election broadcast are those of the political party and not of the SABC.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
My understanding is there's been a slight delay with Nkululeko Kudunga, the EFF Gauteng chair, but he should be joining us in the next few moments. In the meantime, KG on the line from Tshwane High. Politics in South Africa. Is there an election soon, KG? Did I miss something?
Not really, Stephen. You know what? You killed me with the previous caller, but then I think apart. Stephen, you know what? All these political parties are actually promising us how they're going to actually solve our country's problems.
Yeah.
But in my view, I believe it starts with the Minister of Health actually going to a public hospital.
Yeah.
Or the Minister of Kids actually going to a public school.
Yeah.
Department of Land and Land and Agriculture and Rural Development moving to a rural land.
Yeah.
This was the talk some couple of elections ago, but I don't know if it faded away and it never happened. I still don't understand why we have ministers that claiming to represent the majority of the people in the public sector, yet everything, literally everything that they do and have is through the private sector.
Yeah. You know, KG, it's such an interesting question, and I know this comes up from time to time. I mean, the other thing, there's a sort of political phrase for it. It's called social solidarity, you know. If you're the transport minister, you must use public transport, that kind of thing. I think it's an important question. I think, in a way, we can demand that of our leaders. I think it's quite fun to demand that of our leaders, and I think it's important.
Actually, I think if we have to be a case, they should be taken into court, and I actually believe we can actually win the case.
We should make them listen to public service radio too, I think.
Yes, absolutely.
KG and Swanhead, thank you. Pat on the line from Bombela, Nelspruit. Hi, good morning. The situation in KwaZulu-Natal, Pat.
Steve, thank you very much. How are you?
Yeah, I'm well, Pat. Go for it.
If you are making me laugh this morning, you are giving a lot of advice to Eastern Cape. I'm worried to say, I think it was previous week where you interview one of the leaders of KZN who.
Yes, we spoke to the traditional Prime Minister to the Zulu Kingdom, Thulisizwe Buthelezi.
Yes, where he mentioned that they want a Zulu land to be.
Oh no, it was someone else. Yes,
yes. I was very curious to look at the extent of tribalism that is being practiced and is being celebrated by the Zulu people in Zululand. And I'm worried because we are a rainbow nation, and they speak out of these things, and you compare it with the Republic, the Botswana. I think you make an example of Botswana. Say when you get to Botswana, you'll have the Botswana also Botswana. And he forgot that South Africa is a diverse and there's a lot of cultural backgrounds that we have. I wish you could have given our advice as like the Eastern Cape that you do.
So look, I mean, I'm not going to, when I say I'm giving advice, I'm being a bit cheeky. But for me, and you know my view, which is that we're a unitary country with lots of different people in it. And I think living together is kind of the point. I think that's important.
The other thing, that perhaps the government should look at the monarchy of Zululand. I think they should equitably look at the traditional leaders and perhaps look at the budget of the monarchy of Zulu to check on how do they equitably perhaps allocate funds to some of the kings, because they make this president superior to any other king in the Republic of South Africa, which is very wrong in my view. Thank you, Stephen.
All right, no, Pat and Bombela, yeah, interesting points. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Magdalene in Mangaung. Magdalene, hi. How are you feeling ahead of the elections, Magdalene?
Not Magdalene. Magdalene.
No, Magdalene, I'm sorry. The spelling caught me out there. I apologize.
No, you say it in Afrikaans. Yes, anyway, I'm an Afrikaner. I'm a colored person, but I'm not using it in that way because it does not mention it in that way to me.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, morning, Stephen.
Morning, nice Magdalene. Go for it.
Nice to speak to you. Stephen, I'm a little bit worried about the elections and what is said on the news right now at 8 o'clock, saying that it is predicted that ANC will win whatever. That is marketing. That is marketing to our own poor people, our own people who doesn't have much knowledge about what is happening to their lives now. They can see, they can realize, but for the fact that the information is coming in this way, that the prediction will be like this, the people become scared and taken by the rumor and by the by the flow.
Yeah.
To say yes, I'm going to vote for ANC, but on the same time, we are suffering as South Africans. We've been saying this thing, unemployment, whatever, all those things. So the point is that can the prediction and whatever the political analysts, please be fair to the South Africans and say to the South Africans, go and make your vote, which will be better or bring better life for you individually, and for your family, because we are aware that families are not working. within a family, at least not even one person is working.
Yeah.
So poverty is all over in South Africa for the South Africans, but it's in favor. The life is in favor for the foreign nationals. I'm going to say that.
All right. Magdalene, look, we've heard you, and I hear what you say about being fair to South Africans. It's important to do. People need to actually, politicians and everyone needs to sort of treat us with respect. I think that's an important part of it. So, yeah, I do hear you. Sasa from George, hi.
Stephen, how are you?
I'm well. Go for it.
First time caller, by the way.
I know. Welcome.
Thank you, Stephen. Stephen, looking back at one of Nelson Mandela's speeches, where he said, due to the ANC government, when what the apartheid government did to you.
Yeah.
Let's look back at how we got into democracy. ANC taught us how to ban schools, how to ban bridges, how to destroy, in fighting the just cause, of course. Now we are paying so much for petrol.
Yeah.
We're living in load shedding. Economy is going down. People have got the reason, a just cause to revolt. Is the ANC government prepared for the revolt of the people to what the ANC government is doing to the people?
Yeah.
Is the ANC government prepared for Nelson Mandela's words when he said, do to the ANC government what the apartheid government has done to you?
Yeah.
People of South Africa are oppressed. People of South Africa are living in dire situations and conditions of life. People of South Africa don't have proper services. Roads are very bad.
Sure.
So, yeah. Very expensive.
Yeah.
Is the ANC government prepared for the revolt of the masses, as Nelson Mandela had said, due to the ANC government, what you have done to the apartheid government?
Yeah, Sasa, I mean, I'm aware of the quote. I need to check the context of it, but I'm aware of the quote. And I suppose the thing is that, if there's going to be a revolt, it needs to be peaceful and at the ballot box. But I don't think at this stage that there will necessarily be a revolt like that. Sasa on the line from George. I mean, I think you speak for many people. Many people will disagree with you. 26 after 8.
Again, now Varashe Marumo, one of your KNR presenters. If you're interested in anything sport, entertainment, and education, make sure you tune in to Kids Newsroom right here on ACBC2 every Monday at 4:30 p.m. You don't want to miss it.
Business owners, don't waste your time searching for an employee that has it all. They do not exist. But I will tell you what does exist. The Kia K2700 Workhorse. It's versatile, powerful, and reliable. It also arrives on time every day. Save your cash with no deposit and only pay 5,799 Rand per month. It's the business partner you've been waiting for. Up your game with the Kia K2700 Workhorse. Visit kia.co.za for more. T's and C's apply.
Kia. Movement that inspires.
RSP Pekane have a great gift for their home fans. They want to book a spot in the final, but USM Alger says not under their watch. Who will be honored as the champs of the North African Derby? This is the second leg of the Total Energies CAF Confederation Cup semi-final. RSP Pekane battles it out with USM Alger, live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, this Sunday, 28 April at 9 p.m. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Big moment for Mamelodi Sundowns.
Yes, Stephen. Crunch time. They're lighting up the pitch to flip the script against Esperance, and we're all in right behind them. They have a 1-0 deficit nipping at their heels. The stage is set for a dramatic turnaround. Head coach Rulani Mokwena is rallying his troops, instilling belief that on home ground, their fortunes will be reversed.
With commitment, with enthusiasm, with positivity, we know that we can overturn the result. And the good thing about this second leg is that it takes place in front of our people.
And you can catch the match live on SABC Sport, bringing you ball-by-ball commentary as well as expert analysis. Now, the Springbok Women's Sevens squad, they're gearing up for the next weekend's HSBC Sevens tournament, the 7th of 8 in the 2024 season. South Africa will face USA, France and Japan in Pool B, and although the Bok women are yet to beat any of these opponents, Springbok Sevens coach Renfred Dazel remains upbeat.
Obviously, for us as a system, we want to go into the Singapore tournament just to create that momentum. Now that we 90%, 95% not going to be in the top 8 and not achieving the goal that we obviously wanted for the team, but for us, we just want to get that confidence and the commitment from all the players to have a good tournament and just a build-up for the challenge in Madrid.
Cricket action last night. Kaya Zondo, he struck a brilliant 49 in just 23 balls to give the Dolphins innings a boost as they clinched a 5-wicket victory over the Warriors in their Cricket South Africa T20 Challenge semi-final. Took place at Kingsmead last night. The final will be on Sunday in Durban, where they will play, well, the Lions in the final. It's the Dolphins against the Lions. Now on to tennis action. Felix Auger-Aliassime came from a set down to beat Yoshihito Nishioka of Japan 4-6, 6-1, 6-4, and that's the first round of the Madrid Masters yesterday. Golf, Elena Moosman claimed a share of the lead in yesterday's first round of the South African Women's Open, taking place at the Erenvale Country and Golf Estate. On a windy day in the Winelands, she signed for a 6-under par 66 to share the lead with England's Rosie Davis as they both finished one stroke clear of Norway's Julie Boysen. Leanne Pace is the leading South African on 4-under as she continues her quest for a record 6th South African Women's Open title. That's a wrap of your Sport on Sunrise. We'll bring you more here on SFM around 12:30. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. Good morning with SFM. Leading the conversation, it's 8:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, President Cyril Ramaphosa has admitted that not all modes of transportation in South Africa are accessible to people with disabilities. Ramaphosa delivered a keynote address at the Transport Summit on Universal Accessibility in the east of Johannesburg yesterday. The state is expected to hand in more bank records of one of the accused in the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial when it resumes in the High Court in Pretoria this morning. 5 men are on trial for gunning down the Bafana Bafana captain in October 2014. And the mother of slain Pretoria DJ and comedian Peter Mashata Mabuze says she has fond memories of him. Mashata was gunned down in Shoshanguve north of Pretoria on Sunday. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very slow. Good morning. Still very slow getting through Buccleuch. This earlier crash that we reported didn't look too serious, but still being sort of sorted out. So it's the N3 north from Limbro Park on the ramp to the N1 to Midrand, and the N1 from Rivonia Road coming north on that ramp to the N1 Midrand. Both of those highways still being held up. Crash and a breakdown on the N3 south at Van Buren. Big traffic coming through Galulis on the N3, including delays on the N12 and R24 routes trying to get into that N3 at Galulis as well. And the stationary vehicle still with us, N1 south at Rigel, pushing traffic back to Linwood Road. Now, major delay alerts that we've been detailing this morning, getting into Pinetown from the Queensborough, Malvern, North End. It's still the same. Broken down trucks on the M7 at the N3. So that's a heavy queue on the highway from right back at North End and North Park, and then motorists ducking out of that and just causing probably an equally heavy jam on the main road that sort of works up and becomes Stapleton Road without traffic lights at Eden Road as well. So major delays in that part of Durban. Also a breakdown on your way to Durban around the Umlas Road area. That's been causing a delay from as far back as Linfield Park. Cape Town Forest Drive going in and out of Pinelands. That looking quite busy this morning, and quite a backlog of traffic top end of Robert Sobukwe queuing into Belleville. That queue there running up towards Fort Trekker Road. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The highly anticipated Metro FM Music Awards are finally here, and the live concert happening with a star-studded lineup of DJs and live performances.
Make some beautiful noise!
On the lineup, Oscar Mbo, Oskido, Dala Tuxin, Makadzi, Lamise Hallworthy, Mtunzi, Luandrungulu, Boomshaga, Amos, Naked DJ, and a special live performance by the internationally acclaimed Hoa Bailey.
You can
can now secure your tickets from 300 Rand at computicket.co.za. Don't miss your chance to be part of this unforgettable celebration. 27th April at Mbambela Stadium, Mpumalanga. #MMA24. Black to the future. Metro FM. It's where you want to be.
After a 0-0 draw in Cairo, action continues in Kumasi between Dreams FC and Zamalek SC. The Ghanaian outfit want to show their visitors what they are known as Still Believe. They believe they will triumph, but the Royal Club insists they will graduate to the final. This is the second leg of the Total Energies CAF Confederation Cup semi-final. Catch Dreams FC versus Zamalek Sporting Club live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 this Sunday, 28 April at 6 p.m. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. #We love it here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
26 minutes now to 9 the time. Good morning. I'm glad you're with us here on SAFM Sunrise. Now, we'd hoped to do this the other way around, but one or two technical problems this morning. So what we're going to do for the next 25 minutes or so is do the interview we had planned to do a little earlier, and there are some technical problems. So it's a great pleasure to welcome to the studio Nkululeko Dunga. He's the Gauteng chair of the Economic Freedom Fighters. He's also, of course, the member of the Mayoral Committee for Finance in Ekurhuleni. And this is part of a series of interviews we're doing ahead of the elections where we try and speak to leaders from the different political parties face to face, sort of, do 20, 25 minutes uninterrupted and just get a sort of sense of how things are going on the campaign trail ahead of the elections. And Nkululeko Dunga, thank you for coming in and I really appreciate it.
No, thank you very much, Stephen, and greetings to the listeners of SAFM this morning.
This is the third campaign, the third national and provincial election that the Economic Freedom Fighters have been involved in. There was 2014, 2019, and now this election. How different has it been to previous elections? A lot's changed in the last 15 years.
Look, there's always a saying that says that the more things change, the more they remain the same. So you don't even have to reflect on the 15 years, you just have to look at the 30 years of the current government having administered South Africa. Dilapidated infrastructure, corruption on the increase, unemployment on the increase, and the gap between the rich and the poor just escalating on a yearly basis, at least even in reference to their own reportings and the mechanisms that they've been able to identify as a government. So the situation in South Africa has always warranted that there should be a different political orientation, particularly political parties, and you have seen a lot of emergence of political parties throughout the years. I think we are seeing the highest number of political party participation, particularly in these elections. So it speaks of an environment in South Africa where there's a lot of aggrievement, and we also celebrate obviously the birth of the EFF for the past 11 years, which has been at the forefront, of a drive for economic freedom in South Africa, and being led by the Commander-in-Chief. So that, from an EFF perspective, this is obviously our third national elections that will be from 2014, 2019, and now we're at the space. We are a much more better organized as a political organization. We're much more structured in terms of our approach, and we're more forthcoming than anyone else. If you are to go on the ground and you see posterings of the EFF almost everywhere in South Africa, and particularly Gauteng, were everywhere. The ground forces of the Economic Freedom Fighters' daily activities door to door. You don't see any other political organization.
One of the big differences with this election is that you are now in government and administration, meaning you yourself are in charge of finance in Ekurhuleni. So there's now for the first time a sort of track record for people to ask you about. Are you finding questions around that? So you're not just governing as the sort of new insurgent party. To an extent, you're not in provincial and national government yet, but to an extent you're also a party in government in some places. So is that changing how you're received by voters?
Yeah, well, definitely. For the past 2 years or so, we learned to appreciate the EFF now coming into government and be able, obviously, to speak of a track record of the EFF in terms of how it operates in terms of governance. And we do get asked a lot of questions, but at the same time, we do get celebrated by those who understand the terrain that we find ourselves in, because not only are we a part of government, but we are part of a structured government that is composed through some form of agreement with other political organizations, which make it much more difficult to fully advocate for each and everything that would be in our manifesto fully, because it requires interaction with political organizations that ordinarily would not have a thorough understanding of our perspective as an organization. So we spend a lot of time trying to explain ourselves to those that we had formed a government on, in terms of why our approach is the best way in terms of governance, And obviously, there is also an impact at the lackluster approach of those that we serve with, and society being able to identify us as a collective as opposed to looking at us differently. But if I were to ask you, Stephen Grootes, the MMCs most likely of the economic freedom fighters across all municipalities, whether it's in Johannesburg, you'd know Dr. Mgini, you'd know Eni, in Ekurhuleni, you'd know myself, you'd know the speaker, but who's the MMC of community safety in Ekurhuleni? You would have no idea, because they're part of the other political party that is not as aggressive in approach in terms of service delivery orientation.
There's a risk there around coalitions, isn't there? Because you know, if you are the EFF and you're working with, I mustn't say coalition, what's it, an informal working arrangement or whatever you call it, with the ANC. But people will also say to you, why are you working with the ANC? And you know where I'm going with this, because everyone's talking about coalitions after the national election.
Yeah. Well, look, we've always announced that the fundamental aspect of it is to constitute a government. As hence, when we came in right after the 2021 elections, we saw it fit to constitute a government. It was very important, in actual fact, that we remove the ANC from power.
You allowed the DA basically to win in Ekurhuleni first.
And we supported the Democratic Alliance coalition. In constituting a government. So we're always prepared to ensure that there is a constitution of a government that is stable, that administers services across all sectors of society, particularly the areas that are predominantly disadvantaged, And then we found it problematic where we had to then realign ourselves, because what we had advocated for in the institution of a governance, particularly in all of these municipalities, was that the DA was now thoroughly focusing on minority areas in terms of service delivery, as opposed to a much more broader approach, from capital expenditure to even maintenance and servicing our people. And it was then important that we have to look at ourselves, look at our voters, look at society, and reflect. And it requires that we changed government, And part of the changing of government was that we must reconstitute it, and now we're in a better position to actually form part of government ourselves, because we now know, even from an opposition perspective, we know how government operates. And we needed to also reflect as an organization, how then do we grow from just being an opposition party? We have to reflect being part of government, and this is where we are. But one of the most fundamental things that we were always clear about is that the ANC must never be in charge of the coffers of the city, because when they do, there's a very high level of corruption, and we needed to protect that as the EFF.
It's interesting because, I was going to keep this for a little later in the interview, but we were here now, so let's talk about this, about the issue around the finance, around, the finance ministry position in national government, or the finance MEC in provincial government, or as you are the finance MMC in Ekurhuleni. So your leader, Julius Malema, has said, I think now twice at least that I'm aware of, that he would work with the ANC, or the EFF would work with the ANC in a coalition if Floyd Shivambu, your deputy national leader, were the finance minister. The ANC chair, Gwede Mantashe, said to Business Day this week, and I made sure I got the quote correctly, he said, where I have influence, so he's the ANC chair, where I have influence, I will never accept Floyd as a Minister of Finance, because that is an outright formula for looting. That's what Gwede Mantashe said this week. How do you respond to that?
Well, you'd have to go around and look at everywhere. What is the perspective of the Auditor General in terms of some of the core functions and core departments, in terms of the findings? And who are the people that are currently running those departments, particularly of finance, from National Treasury all the way down to near local and district municipalities? You'd find that in most cases, it is ANC cadres who are at the forefront of looting of state resources, including parastatal and state-owned enterprises. So there is no better candidate that we can put to the forefront than the Deputy President, as correctly said by the Commander-in-Chief, because consistently he has given a perspective in terms of what ought to happen in the Department of Finance and in the National Treasury, not only from an revenue enhancement perspective, but also in the protection of revenue and legislation around how to avoid tax evasion so that we can increase our revenue base as a country. And these are the ideas that the EFF has always sponsored, and at the forefront of it has been the Deputy President.
Okay, I mean, people, and there are people who oppose you. I'm sure you're aware by now that there are people very critical of the EFF. And there possibly, some of them are going to say, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I'm sure that this will come. They'll say, this is actually all about control of SARS. And we've seen before what happens when SARS can be weakened during the Zuma era, which I know you'll say was an ANC era, and that's fine. That's true. That's factual. And that the aim would be to protect people from the VBS scandal or something like that. There'll be no truth in that.
Of course, there's no truth in that. In actual fact, the EFF has always spoken about the great work that SARS is currently doing under its current leadership. We've seen a lot of cases where people are found to have been defrauding SARS, being arrested just of recently as well. But why would we not want to enhance the work of SARS when they themselves have actually failed to institute anything against the current sitting president, who has found with the millions of dollars underneath his mattress and sofas, which is something that we advocated for, to say that we are against corruption, and we speak of corruption at all spheres, at any space, including that of the president, that SARS failed to speak of against, So it's an ill-informed position to assume that we want to take over government in general for self-protection, when we have always been saying that the core essence of us wanting to take over government is to have deliverables that can be done in the immediate. And we're only looking for 5 years as the EFF so that we can show the people of South Africa that this is indeed possible. And if we had failed in the 5 years, they don't even have to vote for us anymore.
So
it's that simple.
So you support Edward Kieswetter. You'd want him to stay as commissioner. He's just signed another 2 years. I know you're only a Gauteng leader, but I don't know if you can say that, but I find it interesting.
Yeah, well, the position is that so far so good. Yeah.
Okay. I'm amazed, by the way, it took us so long to get to Palabala. There are one or two other issues that are very interesting. By the way, you were there, SAFM. It's 13 minutes now to 9 the time. We're speaking to Nkululeko Dunga, the chair of the EFF in Gauteng. And, of course, it's an opportunity to just hear about the EFF, part of a series of interviews that we're doing. Before the election, so a couple of months ago, I wondered if maybe there was going to be a low turnout in this election. And despite all of the hype and the ANC could lose power and there'll be coalitions everywhere and all the rest, I thought maybe people were so frustrated, angry. I think disappointed generally with our politics for lots of reasons, with all of the parties, including yours maybe. And I thought maybe the turnout would be low. Then MK came along, Umkhonto weSizwe, and former President Jacob Zuma. And then I thought maybe actually we'll start to see quite a high turnout. John Steenhuisen was sitting in the chair that you're sitting in now last week, and he said he's expecting a high turnout. Are you, as the EFF, expecting a high turnout, or do you think people are switched off?
Look, being grounded would obviously have to convince people, one, to go out in their numbers and vote. So we are expecting a large majority of South Africans to actually go out and vote, and equally vote for the economic freedom fighters. We are getting that sense that there's most likely going to be a very high voter turnout. I mean, you also look at the the voter registration weekends, there has been a great spike in terms of new registered voters, particularly for these elections, meaning that using that scientific evidence that is there, that at least there's an appetite for society to actually voice out through the ballot. So we are anticipating that. Historically, when you even look at the social patterns of society, your former suburban areas have always constituted a much more higher voter turnout, going to about 80% at times, 80 to 90%, while what they would refer to as townships and lesser developed communities and disadvantaged backgrounds would be sitting at about 40%, 45%.
Startling figures, those,
it's scary figures. So ours is to zoom in and make people really understand the importance of their vote, and that the disgruntlement of the current living conditions can only be changed through a vote, and a vote against the ruling party.
You launched your election manifesto in KwaZulu-Natal. Your leader, Julius Malema, was there. And obviously KwaZulu-Natal at the time was, the correct place to do this. It's the second most populous province, and you've made some progress there, quite a lot of progress in the last few years. Is MK going to stop that progress? Is MK going to take votes from you?
MK is nothing but a defect and a faction away from the ANC.
So you're not going to go into coalition with them because Jacob Zuma sent a very nice birthday message to Julius Malema.
Of course he should. The Commander-in-Chief is a leader of society, and everyone has sent their well wishes, across all sectors of society. But what I'm trying to say is that we're not worried about the formation of the MK or its growth or its projected growth in any parts of the country. In actual fact, the people that should be more worried would be the ANC, because the same leaders that you would have ordinarily found in the MK are people who are disgruntled, and predominantly are people who were extremely aligned to the former President Jacob Zuma, where we share no alignment with him, and the people of KZN are in appreciation of the economic freedom fighters. For the first time, we're able to go to Moses Mabhida and fill it up, with no one based outside the province, everyone just coming from KZN. That is a signal of growth for the economic freedom fighters, and in that, there's no political party that can have an impact on the growth of the EFF as an organization.
We're talking to Nkululeko Dunga, the Gauteng leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters. You're with SFM, 9 minutes now to 9 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very busy on Pretoria's N1 South, the breakdown before Rigel Avenue. It's been there since I think about 6 o'clock this morning, and here we are, 10 to 9, and it's still pushing traffic back as far as Atterbury. The other issue is that crash at Buccleuch, which is still slow, although the traffic's easing. N1 North, N3 North on those ramps to the N1 to turn towards Midrand being held up. There also a little build-up of traffic on the N1 South. It looks like a crash just before the Four-Ways exit, so just heading down towards William Mandela is still slow. Collision and a breakdown on the N3 at Van Buren, and that's now really heavy getting through Galilee's. N3 from Edenvale, N12 and R24 is from the Edenvale exits, all backed up trying to get into that N3 queue through Galilee's. It is heavy. Stationary vehicle with us coming out of Pietermaritzburg to Durban. That's been there a while as well. This one at Linfield Park, so just after Ashburton, that's where you're going to pick up that queue. M7 into Pinetown stays really heavy from North to Dean. 2 broken down trucks before the N3. Only 1 lane open to squeeze all that traffic through. In Cape Town, looks like something's happening around Marine Drive on the N1 inbound, where that traffic was starting to flow and ease up. It is now pushing back through towards the Sable Road exit. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Join us on Afternoon Express Tuesday at 6 p.m. on S3 as we celebrate Workers' Day. Tatu Mambalani shares how to assert yourself at work without being arrogant, and Amy Kleinhans lets us in on how to beat a bad day at the office. And we're making peanut butter balls for that 3 p.m. brain fog. That's Afternoon Express Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Repeat Sundays at 8:30 a.m. only on S3.
The Smiling One achieved a big smile in their own backyard after a narrow 1-0 victory against Masandawana. Kabuyelo says they will dish out orders in Loftus to book the VIP ticket to the final. But Red and Yellow Tunisian gear plan to continue where they left off, to silence Rulani and his boys.
This is the second leg of the Total Energies CAF Champions League semi-final. Experience the exhilaration of African football. Mamelodi Sundowns FC clashes with ES Tunis FC. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. This Friday, 26 April at 7:30 p.m. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love Cheer. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
7 minutes to 9. Good morning, you with SAFM. Glad you're with us here on SAFM Sunrise this morning. We are speaking to Nkululeko Dunga, the Gauteng chair of the Economic Freedom Fighters in Gauteng, and of course representing the EFF. We try and speak to as many of the political parties as we can face to face before the elections. Nkululeko, there are lots of different ways that people in South Africa talk about foreign nationals. And the way that I think the EFF has explained it is that, and I think I've remembered this quote, tell me if I get it right, that a black person from Africa who is in South Africa is at home. In other words, they're African and they're South, and therefore they can live here. They're at home in South Africa. And you find this in talk radio around the world, by the way, but you find it particularly here on SAFM at this moment, where people are phoning in and saying there are too many foreign nationals, they're taking our jobs, they're doing this, they're doing that, and we have big arguments about it. Do you think you're going to lose votes because of your view, because of the EFF's view on people from our continent?
Yeah, well, definitely not. So what our view on national foreign, what they would call foreigners, is that there is no traceable origin, particularly of black people, outside of Africa. So in any parts of Africa where you are, you should be at home. And you look at the scramble for Africa and what has led to the colonization of many states of Africa by European and other countries out of the continent was a cosmetic approach in terms of demarcation, because at no point are there any fencings, by the way. We're all relying on natural infrastructure to create a fallacy of what determines borders. That's why there's a river that flows between ourselves and Mozambique, and we refer to that as a border. But the essence of the assumption that people are losing jobs or their jobs are being taken away by foreigners is not true. The core of it all is that the economy is not growing. And when there is no economy, and the economy is not growing as it should, it would never, at any given point in time, be able to absorb the number of people who are eligible to be employed and to form part of economic activity in the country. So we can say that let all Nigerians and Mozambicans and Zimbabweans go. There would still be no jobs for the South Africans that are here. And that's the core of what our problem is. That is that the government must enable an environment that will look at the reindustrialization of South Africa, that can become a program of action that can then absorb jobs. And even with the reindustrialization, you would have to look at the skills sector and actually look at ways of skilling our people. Because there was a report, I think it was the GPI report, which said that between 1994 and now, only 15%, by the way, of black people in South Africa are skilled, as opposed to 51% of Asians and 61% of white people. So you would still have, even after having done a re-industrialization of South Africa, a lot of black people who are still marginalized now, who just become easily disposable labor, who are unskilled in their majority.
So this is the biggest problem we face, right? Is particularly unemployment and youth unemployment. It's the biggest long-term problem we face. And I mean, I'm convinced by people who say if we don't solve that, we've solved nothing. Everything hinges around that. So you talk about the skills. I mean, of course. How do we fix that? And I find it quite frustrating, actually, that the people, the young black people who are betrayed betrayed by our education system. That there's there's a second chance program, but there's no big national effort that I see everywhere where we're saying, okay, we're going to train you to do this. What would the EFF do for them? Because that's also your core constituency.
Education in South Africa is commodified. And that's the one aspect that ought to change. We need to have free and decolonized education. Decolonized education means that economic freedom forms part of the curriculum, sovereignty, and many other aspects, including indigenous knowledge, form part of the core essence of decolonized education in South Africa. It must be quality and it must be free. We still don't understand what is the necessity of NSFAS. Even now, outside from exercising political patronage and extending the element of corruption, and we can say this because it's there for everyone. It's glaring, So why is it that the Department of Higher Education is not paying directly institutions of higher learning, and the institutions of higher learning would then allocate a particular grant towards their own students, which would then nullify the responsibility of NSFAS that is currently there. Those are just some of the propositions that the economic freedom fighters is advocating for. We need more universities. We need more high-tech schools and specialized schools across the entire South Africa, so that we can increase the skill base. And once we increase the skill base based on the needs of society and reindustrialization, would then be able to absorb the very same people that would have skilled into the economy of South Africa.
And Kulele Kudunga, thank you for coming in. I really appreciate the time. The Gauteng chair of the EFF, and of course also the member of the Mayoral Committee for Finance in Ekurhuleni. Well, it's been one of those weeks. Do enjoy Freedom Day tomorrow. Reflect on where we are as a nation, how far we've come, how much more there is to do. We will be back with you on Monday from Zelma, from Melissa, from Amandla. That's a person, by the way. And from Stanza, myself, look after yourself. You're with SFM, leading the conversation. Good morning. It's 9 o'clock.
In our top stories, work underway to ensure transport accessible for persons with disabilities, and state to submit additional bank records in Meyiwa murder trial. Good morning. President Cyril Ramaphosa has admitted not all modes of transportation in South Africa are accessible to people with disabilities. Ramaphosa delivered a keynote address at the Transport Summit on Universal Accessibility in the east of Johannesburg yesterday. Delegates are seeking solutions to universal access to all types of transportation. Ramaphosa says a standardized process is underway.
Work is underway to roll out what I would call a standard for the universal accessibility of all road users, or road-used vehicles rather. This will be introduced with the support of vehicle manufacturers and covers both public transport passengers and drivers of motor vehicles. The Department of Transport has gazetted a national policy for parking discs that will enable drivers with disabilities to use them in one part of the country and everywhere in South Africa.
The state is expected to hand in more bank records of one of the accused in the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial when it resumes in the High Court in Pretoria this morning. 5 men are on trial for gunning down the Bafana Bafana captain in October 2014. The accused, Muzizi Bia, previously told the court he had left Gauteng in 2013 and only returned in 2015. He said he therefore could not have been involved in the killing of Meyiwa. But Roni Sibanda, who is part of the prosecution team, said there were a number of transactions from Sibia's bank account between October 2014, the month in which Meyiwa was murdered, and December the same year.
The purpose of this evidence, in short, is to challenge the alibi of accused number one during the time of the commission of the offence, and secondly also to show the telephone numbers that the accused persons provided when they opened this particular bank account.
The mother of slain Pretoria DJ and comedian Peter Mashata Mabuze says she has fond memories of him. Mashata was gunned down in Shoshanguve, north of Pretoria on Sunday. His mother, Rebecca Mabuze, was speaking at his memorial service in Pretoria yesterday.
I've cried enough. Now it's for me to smile. But even when you see me on TV, I remember Peter Tavern because he went back home. I get a little, the legacy must continue. Aluta continue. I always call him my baby. Get a baby boy. I get a baby boy. Why you told get a potly?
In election news, member of the ANC's National Executive Committee, Inori says he is confident the governing party will win 50% of votes in next month's election. Some analysts have predicted that the ANC is likely to get around 40%, but Godongwana says the ANC is not expecting to have to form a coalition government after the elections.
I'm on the ANC list as we speak. If the ANC and I sit in a comfortable position because we believe we're going to get more than 51%, so I'm going to go back to Parliament. I'm saying we're going to get more than 50%. That's where we're working, and I think the numbers suggest in that direction.
The DA's Gauteng Premier candidate Salim Simanga has echoed the EFF leader Julius Malema's remarks that Eskom will resume rolling blackouts after next month's elections. He was speaking in Rivonia in Johannesburg yesterday after handling the media a detailed report on the country's energy crisis and the DA's proposed solutions. Calvin Ludla reports.
Addressing DA members at Lilisley Farm in Rivonia, north of Johannesburg, Msimanga says people must not be fooled by the sudden disappearance of load shedding. Msimanga says it will resurface come the end of May after the elections. He says the current government does not care how to deal with crime, education, corruption and other challenges that are facing the country. Msimanga says the DA welcomes every stakeholder that wants to work with them to come forward. He says this will help them and we can join hands to solve some of the challenges facing the country.
Recapping the top story, President Cyril Ramaphosa has admitted that not all modes of transportation in South Africa are accessible to people with disabilities. Ramaphosa delivered a keynote address at the Transport Summit on Universal Accessibility in the east of Johannesburg yesterday. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
Get your payments done with the utmost security and convenience when you purchase a TV license now. With our new secure payment systems with a one-time PIN, OTP feature, and the choice of receiving your OTP via SMS or email, you can ensure prompt and secure payments. The additional use of capture will protect you against spam and automated data attractions. With TV licenses, you can enjoy watching all your favorite shows or movies that matter to you. Get yours today. Visit www.tvlic.co.za.
Did you know? South Africans consume more water per person per day than the world average. We use approximately 237 litres of water per person per day, while the world average stands at 173 litres of water per person per day. To achieve water for all, each one of us needs to use water sparingly and more efficiently. We can do this by ensuring that we don't waste water. Take 2-minute showers, fix our dripping taps, and use buckets to wash our cars, amongst others. #SaveWater. Every drop counts. This message is brought to you by the Department of Water and Sanitation.
And we will buy 500 cars and we will buy 500 more. Just to be the one who buys your car, will come to you and offer more. We buy cars, we buy cars. We buy cars, we buy cars.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
Be part of the 17th Annual SA Sport Awards under the theme Celebrating 30 Years of Freedom Through Sporting Excellence, with great prizes to be won every week. All you have to do is SMS A, B, C, D, or E to 32020 to vote for your favorite People's Choice Nominee of the Year. SMS is charged at R1.50. Free SMSs do not apply. The nominees are A. Eben Etzebeth, B. Gardestein, C. Siamtanda Siya Kolisi, D. Pesitau, E. Kirsten Neuschafer. SMS A, B, C, D, or E to 32020. Voting line closes at 9 p.m. on the 5th of May 2024. T's and C's apply. For more information, visit dsac.gov.za. Catch the SA Sport Awards on Sunday, 5th of May on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 1 at 8 p.m. Proudly brought to you by the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture. SABC Sport is the official broadcaster of the SA Sport Award. Hashtag #IsNjazagay. Hashtag SASA 17th edition.
The Talking Point on SAFM. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
We want to say that we shall continue to demand the scrapping of any system, whatever, that is discriminatory, that is designed for a certain race group. We shall demand a national uniform system for all Azanians. Power! Superficially, it will appear that the country is in a state of political flux, which was the title of my address. New constitutional models are advocated and debated in conference after conference. There appears to be confusion even in the once well-disciplined monolithic National Party. White academics are forever telling us that things are changing, that they will not be the same again. There are constellations in the sky. We agree there are constellations in the sky. But down here on terra firma, we are convinced there are as yet no changes in the status quo, or for that matter, any intention of changing anything materially. The ruling Nationalist Party is merely playing with words and has no intention, basically, of changing the policy of apartheid.
Tina Bantwa